President, I call this meeting to order. For those watching on TV, the channels are Comcast Channel 99 and Verizon Channel 33. And the participant call-in number is 978-771-0819. The queue for call-ins is limited to 3 people at a time, so if you call in and can't get through, as people speak and get off the line, space will open up, so please try back if you aren't able to get through initially. We also have a slight delay between live and reducing on TV, so we'll stretch for a few minutes when we're waiting for public comment to make sure people have a chance to call in if they wish. And with that, we'll start with agenda item A, approval of minutes from April 27th, 2020.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Vinny Fratalia here. I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of April 27th, 2020 as written.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
All right, motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Now we have minutes from May 4th, 2020.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of May 4th, 2020 as written.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Care of agenda item A. Agenda item B, committee reports, administrative actions. Are there any committee reports that any members wish to make at this time?
So, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, all set.
All right, hearing none, then we'll move on to administrative actions. First up, B2, 1574 Main Street, non-substantial change request. This was continued from our 5-4 meeting. Do we have somebody on for 1574 Main Street?
You do, Mr. Chairman. Jim Hanley, Civil Design Consultants. How are we doing?
All right, Mr. Hanley, the floor is yours.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen here. So hopefully this will work here. Let's see. Okay, so you might recall that Monday night I was kind of sitting here minding my own business, waiting for another meeting, and Joel pulled me in and kind of asked me to provide some comment on this change, right? So I ended up leaving that meeting basically with the orders to go chase down Lieutenant Sawicki and make a request about modifying the curve. So I reached out to him on Thursday. I put the question in front of him. I CC'd Anna on the email, so everything was was run past the board as well. In the meantime, once I had done that, I started looking at a couple of older plans here, and just to refresh your memory, the question to Lieutenant Sawicki was, would you be okay with sloped granite curbing instead of just the concrete rumble strip? The thing is here is that we actually have sloped granite curbing. I don't know if you can see my screen right here, but this is just off of Google Earth right here. So that entrance island, the divider, is actually on sloped granite curbing right now.
I'm not sure if anybody else sees it, but it's not. All I can see is your
Cursor
moving around, but there's no picture below it.
Okay, let me see if I can do. Let's see. Well, I'm not sure how to get back to that, but you can take my word for it. There's slope granite curbing out there right now. So at the end of the day, I asked the question to Lieutenant Sawicki. I followed up with him on Friday. He got back to me earlier today, said he spoke with the chief about it. And they're just concerned with the potential to ding up the tires in the truck as they're making the turn in. They strongly prefer the rumble strip to the alternative that's actually out there right now.
All right.
With that being said, I'll try to answer any questions you have.
All right. We'll start with Mr. Fratalia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess if that's what they want, I have no problem, okaying that. I didn't think it was a big deal. I went by the site. I seen the slope curbing. I didn't think there was that much of a difference in the terrain. Seemed to have the large tires, but I mean, what kind of a cost is that going to be to the owner of the property or the leasee?
Yeah, to remove that, to cut that out, to cut the curbing out, to cut the pavement out, to put new concrete in, we're probably looking at, 3,500 to 6,000 bucks plus or minus. I mean, it's an expense.
Yeah.
But, it's some of the fire department asked for, so,
Yeah.
that's what we can do.
Did they answer any questions about the possibility of people using that as a left turn coming in as well off of Main Street when they miss Victor Drive?
No. I explained your concern
Yeah.
to them, but I didn't necessarily advocate for your position either. I just tried to explain it to him so that he understood and have him make a decision. So that was kind of what I did. So we didn't really get into detail about the
Okay.
turn movements of it.
All right, my only concern is that people going in there, but I guess we'll address that as we go forward. If it becomes a concern, then maybe we gotta address some signage maybe or something, but I'm okay
Yeah.
with that suggestion, for their tires.
Okay.
All set, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
All right, Mr. Delaney.
Yeah, I was concerned about it because originally we had voted to, it was to make sure that they took the right-hand turn coming out of there. But I noticed that they do have a sign there that says, right-hand turn only. So the sign is already there. We just got to hope that people will obey it, I guess. But I don't have a problem with removing the thing and putting in the rumble strip. I don't have a problem with that at all. I just wanted to make sure there was a sign there telling people that it's right turn only. That was my suggestion last week when we went through this, and it's the same thing. But the sign is there.
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Fowler.
Mr. Fowler's on mute.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right, Mr. Fowler. Yep, there you go.
This is the same problem that we had up on Andover Street, and people kept crossing over the Rebel Strip to go the wrong way, and it created quite a havoc because there's more traffic.
Mr. Fowler.
What's that?
You guys still hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
We can hear you, Steve.
Mr.
It's just
Fowler, you still
bothers.
there?
He's on mute again.
All right. Mr. Fowler, do we have you back? There you go.
Someone else is doing it over me.
No, I think we all kind of got messed up there. I'm not sure. I don't think anybody could hear me either for a minute.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
The last thing I think I heard you say, Mr. Fowler, was you were talking about up on Andover Street.
Well, this is a similar problem as what we had on Andover Street. The only problem is it's 4 lanes up there in front of the restaurant, and that created more of a havoc because they're going on the left across 2 lanes into the 3rd. Here, it's not as bad. With the sign, obviously if someone has an accident, I don't particularly, I'm not concerned about the person that makes the mistake, but it's the person that they're having an accident with that they're creating. So I guess we have to look at it that what's the lesser of 2 evils? And I do consider it an evil, but if the board wants to have the rumble strip with a sign, as long as the sign, to be honest with you, what they did up on Andover Street, they took the sign out, then eventually, in the back of night, they took the rumble strip out and put the hot top there. So everything that we wanted, they took away. I would hope this doesn't happen there. What's that?
Nope, there you go. No, I had you back. You just dropped
Who
out.
was talking? Who was talking?
That's me, Mr. Fowler, because they dropped out again. We couldn't hear you.
Well, I'm not touching it.
No, I don't think it's you.
Okay. But if that's the case, hopefully we'll be all right, and if not, we'll have to watch it. But I just not pleased with the result, having seen it in other places. So if the board wants to have the rumble strip there, that's fine. But to be honest with you, I've never seen a truck get a flat on a granite slope curb. Maybe the different drivers. That's it. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Ryder.
Thank you. I'll agree with Mr. Fowler. You know, that's the reason they make sloped granite curbing is to it's mountable for vehicle access for those circumstances. You know, I think if we're going to allow the rumble strip and the signage, that be part of the substantial change. That there's random inspections if the rumble strip is not maintained. That it can come back in front of the board and required to put that in back in the original state. I'm just concerned about an accident as well. I believe we did that so the emergency access was going to be from Victor Drive. So I don't know what changed between the time that this went through the internal departments to currently. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. I agree with the other members that, you know, obviously we went kind of back and forth over the entrances and how we wanted people going in, but, you know, we've gotten a request from the fire department. I'm not interested in, you know, not accepting their requests for their purposes. But as with everybody else, I do worry about what the outcome may be. I guess for me, I would suggest one, and I think Mr. Rogers brought up, one, we have to make sure that we condition this on that the rumble strip will be maintained in good condition in perpetuity. And as well as I think we're going to have to retain the ability to, if needed, request additional signage or, you know, whether it be something on the ground to, you know, if it becomes an issue that people are ignoring the way you are supposed to, you know, enter and leave the site, that we might have to find other ways to make sure that we're directing people correctly and we avoid any problems. So I think with those two things, I don't have a problem if we keep those, put those in as conditions for allowing the non-substantial change. So with that, I'm sorry?
Nothing, I just said, okay, thank you.
Oh, okay. All right. So with that, what is the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, make a comment, please.
Yes,
If
Mr.
we are
Vitale.
going to proceed with this, I'd like to waive the fees involved in this because it's the fire department requesting the change and I don't know what the fees would be, or permit fees, but if we could waive those, it'd be a benefit to the Circle Health.
All right. So those fees that we would be able to, that we have the ability to waive, sure. The other members fine with that?
That's fine.
That's fine.
Absolutely.
All right. So then with that, additional, what is the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the non-substantial change with the items in perpetuity of maintenance of the rumble strip, as well as continued monitoring of the entrance off of Main Street, as well as Mr. Fratalia's waiving of any potential fees that we are allowed to waive.
All right. So then that will be the board retaining the ability to request additional signage, whether on the ground or standing signs in the future, correct?
Correct.
All right, so I have a motion made by Mr. Ryder. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion made and second. All those, I guess.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
there's a caller on the line for this. I don't know if you're taking calls, but someone would
Nope.
like to speak.
This is administrative action, so it's not public comment.
I'll let them know. Thank you.
All right, so we take the roll then on that. Mr. Battaglia,
Yes.
Mr. Delaney,
Aye.
Mr. Fowler,
Yes,
Mr. Ryder,
Yes.
and the chair votes aye as well. So unanimous for the non-substantial change. All right, moving on to agenda item B3, 940 Andover Street, non-substantial change request. Do we have anyone for 940 Andover Street?
Hello.
Yes.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Planning Board members. This is Andrew Stack, Project Manager for the Tewksbury DPW Engineering Division. I'm also joined on the line by Kevin Hardeman, the Town Engineer. This is a non-substantial change determination filing on behalf of the property owner for the mobile gas station located at 940 Andover Street. The owner of the property is Net Lease Realty out of Orlando, Florida. They've authorized the DPW to submit this application on their behalf. The town of Tewksbury and Mass DOT are reconstructing that intersection of Andover Street and River Road. And this mobile gas station is the gas station that's located on that corner of Andover and River Road. And as part of the intersection reconstruction project, the existing mobile gas station sign will be in conflict with one of the future traffic signal posts that are being installed as part of that project. And so this filing is for a non-substantial change determination for the relocation of that existing mobile gas station sign approximately 20 feet to the east of its current location. And it'll be in the same grassed area that the sign is currently located. That's all I have, and if you have any questions, hopefully I can answer them.
Mr. Chairman.
We'll start with Mr. Delaney. I apologize.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the moving of the mobile sign. The thing is, on the plan, it also stated that Walgreens was going to move their sign as well. But on the plan, they relocated the mobile sign, but I never saw the relocation of the Walgreens sign. I didn't know where it was going to go. But I don't have a problem with
Yeah, that's going to be as a separate non-substantial change determination filing, separate from this one.
Okay, so the thing is, the only thing we're dealing with tonight then is the mobile sign.
That's correct.
Okay. I don't have a problem with them relocating it to put the traffic lights or whatever they're going to do there. I don't have a problem with it. I'm all set, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Delaney. Mr. Fowler.
I'm all set.
All right, Mr. Ryder.
All set, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Fratalia.
All set, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right, and the chair is all set as well. And with that, what is the pleasure of the board for the non-substantial change as submitted?
Chairman,
Mr.
I'd like to make a
Chairman,
motion to approve the non-substantial change for 940 Andover Street as written.
All right, so a motion made by Mr. Battaglia. Do I have a second? Did I hear you, Mr. Ryder?
Second.
yes, second, please. Yes.
Mr. Delaney, either way.
Either one.
All right, so with that, we'll take the roll. Mr. Delaney,
Aye.
Mr. Fowler,
Aye.
Mr. Ryder,
Aye.
Mr. Battaglia.
All right.
And the chair votes aye as well. Unanimous approval for the non-substantial change for 940 Andover Street. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to agenda item B4. And this is added to the agenda. So this is 1880 Main Street, Tewksbury Country Club, and this is a concept plan discussion. Do we have anybody here for 1880 Main Street?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Jim Hanley, Civil Design Consultants, and I'm here with Dick Kuko and Mark Ginsburg as well.
All right, just a reminder to everyone else, as we move on in the hearings, just a reminder to anyone who isn't part of what's being discussed, if you can just mute your computer or your phone, that way that we cut down on the background noise and the people who are presenting or commenting can be heard clearly. All yours, Mr. Hanley.
Okay, great. So again, I'm going to share my screen here if I can. Let's see.
There you go. It's up.
Okay. So we're here tonight for a conceptual review for some site improvements and building improvements at the Tewksbury Country Club. We want to do two things tonight. First, I just kind of want to give you the once over on the proposal itself. And then I want to talk a little bit about the process, and the process specifically because of where we are under the governor's emergency order and how that affects the permitting, specifically this special permit. So, where are we? We're at 1880 Main Street, and kind of put this together based off of the GIS. So you can see Main Street, you can see Livingston Street and the golf course. The lot that actually we're talking about is only 4 acres, and it has the clubhouse, the pro shop, and probably 2/3 or 3/4 of the parking area. So what are the proposed improvements here? So those improvements are pretty straightforward. We basically have a 2,044 square foot addition. That addition is, let me see if I can find mine. Hold tight 1 sec. I'm just spinning. So if you're familiar with the golf course, this here is the existing pro shop. The golf course is to the top of the page. The existing clubhouse is over to the left. Basically, this kind of wedged area in here with the proposed building addition off of the clubhouse. So this kind of gets you kind of oriented as to where on the site these improvements are going to be located. So with this one here, I can kind of zoom in and show you what we're proposing, but essentially it's a 2,044 square foot building addition. We've broken this out into 2 different locations for this building addition. The first is a 1,250 square foot, 100 seat restaurant, which will be located on the side of the existing pro shop that is closer to the clubhouse in the parking area. And then on the side and further, of course, be 794 square foot relocated clubhouse and additional bathroom facilities. The actual improvements to the site are really minimal. We have minor adjustments to the parking area. We can see along this right-hand side here, we just kind of restriped these and reoriented some of these spaces. We relocated a dumpster pad here, so it's more in line with an access drive to make the access to it a little bit easier. We've added an additional handicap space over in this location here. And really part of this is to kind of soften up that parking area that you saw that had a lot of pavement. We actually have almost 1,200 square foot reduction from impervious to landscaping. So we're actually adding more landscaping to what's there right now. So you can see it's a significant amount of landscaping in these areas here. And then the final thing would just be some minor site utilities, specifically a new sewer service to the existing grease traps to service the new restaurant. So in addition to that, as far as the existing clubhouse goes, there's the existing tavern there, which is right now the public restaurant. That tavern is going to change its use, and it's really going to be predominantly used for overflow events, for wedding events, for receptions. And the idea here is there's no net increase or change to the amount of restaurant seats that are out there. There will actually be a slight reduction to the seats there. So to keep it in mind, this is a concept review for a site plan special permit. We're not looking for any variances or any waivers. We're on your schedule for June 9th. We thought we had this one meeting, we might as well have presented to you. So that's kind of the physical changes that we're proposing out there. Now, process here is we just want to make sure we're on the same page with process. So because of the emergency order that allows us to have meetings like this, that the governor passed, part of that order is a change to the appeal period specific to special permits. So typically, we come to you, you approve it, you sign the Mylar, we file it with the clerk, and the appeal period begins, that 20-day appeal period. Well, to protect everybody's rights here, the governor has said, no, we want the appeal period to start when the emergency order is lifted, okay? So we found that out while we were kind of putting this package together, and it affected how we wanted to present it to you. So you can see that on this sheet here, there's two different building addition groups, one that has a solid hatch, one that has just kind of a lined hatch. The 794 square foot addition, which is the addition that's in this location here, it's not part of this special permit application. We wanted to show it to you so that you guys could see the proposal in its entirety, all the context. You get a full picture of what we're actually proposing out there. But because we're under that 800 square foot threshold, this 794 square foot portion of the building addition will be permitted directly through the building department. It's not going to be part of this review. We just wanted to show it to you. And the reason we're doing that is because we don't know when that order will be lifted, and therefore we don't know when we'd be able to go out and actually build this. So this way preserves our rights a little bit here to just say, we're going to go through this process with you. We're going to show you everything here, but this is kind of a standalone piece that will allow us to pull a building permit like any other building addition that we could do and build it through that way. But again, we just wanted to kind of throw everything at you so you saw everything that we were doing, and that's kind of the two things I wanted to discuss with you.
All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Cuco.
one thing that's really important about this is that this new addition that Jim's talking about on the right-hand side with the pro shop, that's going to have the bathrooms, because once we close off the tavern, the restrooms are in there, and we don't know where the COVID-19 is going, and we want to make sure that the golfers have the ability to use the restroom. So it's kind of important that we take this two-phase approach because, golf courses are open. We expect that they'll probably be perpetuated with even a little bit more freedom. Maybe they'll allow carts, but restrooms is very important. So I think it's important because of the appeal period time, which you read it, it says when the emergency order is lifted or 45 days. So it could be even a 65-day window instead of the normal 20-day window. So just wanted to make sure that the board was aware that as you know, there are no restrooms now outside. You have to use the clubhouse. So this will be a real advantage to the golfers and the restaurant and everyone else who's using the outdoor facilities.
Thank you, Mr. Cuco. Anything else from the petitioners?
Yep, you got me there, Mark Ginsburg. Hey, so just to go back what Jim had said there, so as much as we're saying it's not part of the review, but we put it on the plan so you could review it there. So we're going to take technical comments from the DPW. And if this board has any comments too, the whole entire addition there, that's what's on the plan for too. So even though we may go right to building permit for that portion of the addition there, it's on the plan for your review now. We'll take the comments and any suggestions you may have. Same with the DPW too.
All right, thank you. All right, with that, we'll start with Mr. Fowler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate Mr. Cuco answering the question that I was going to ask about the bathrooms. So that's great. I think this will really round off things down there. Take the golf in one section of the area of the buildings, and all the functions and most of the eating will be on the other side. But you still have a 2-mat tavern, and that's fantastic. I can't picture a better plan. Too bad we didn't think about this. They didn't think about this at the beginning, but that's fine. It's come a long way. Many years. How many years, Mark?
Well, the course is 22 in the clubhouse.
That's amazing when you think about it. Yep, that's amazing. But I'm basically all set, Mr. Chairman. I can't wait to lift a cup at the new TUMAC.
All right, thank you, Mr. Fowler. Mr. Ryder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Cuco answered one of the questions that I had about the restrooms. Thank you for that. And I look forward to the project. I think it looks good. Just one question. You stated altering the parking. Will you be losing any parking over there? It looks at a few spots over by the clubhouse.
Yeah, we actually have a 1 space reduction. But if you do the math between the existing tavern that has 200 seats and we're proposing 100 seats, we're going to have a net reduction in seats. So therefore, we'll probably have a net reduction in required parking. So we'll have those numbers for you when we present.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you. I'm all set, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Battaglia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually liked the new design you presented tonight. Looks great. Right in line with the clubhouse and the whole structure down there at Tewksbury Country Club. With the idea of you reducing the pavement there, bringing in more landscaping, and the addition of the bathrooms is a big help for the golfers, not having to go into the building. So it's going to be 2 separate entities. Is that what I'm anticipating here, Mr. Ginsburg?
Say it one more time. What was the
It's going
question?
to be two separate entities, right? One, the golf
Oh, yeah, I
course.
mean, we're trying to separate the golf course, the golfers from any a la carte dining from the main clubhouse with all the events. Yeah, it'll be two separate operations over there when it's all said and done.
Okay, great. I look forward to seeing the plans. With that, I'm all set, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Delaney.
I guess all the questions have been answered. I'm all set with this. I like the idea of the new addition, the bathrooms being out there and so forth. I use that golf course a lot. I think it's a great idea.
I
don't know. You on right now?
Someone's on the line. Somebody's on the line, but not muted. For your crisscrossing into the hearing right now. If you wouldn't mind muting, please.
Did you hear what I said?
We did. Thank you, Mr. Delaney.
Okay, I'm all set, Mr. Chairman, with this.
Thank you. All right, yeah, I'll echo what the other members said. I think this is kind of an ideal setup. We're not affecting any abutters here that should have any issue with what's going on. It separates the two operations, putting most of what goes on with the golf course in one section, while the events can go on in the other, and the two do not have to bump into each other. So that I'm sure that will be helpful for everyone's wedding photos and everyone's tea times. So I think that would be ideal. So I look forward to the plans coming in for, I think they said our next meeting. But I have no issues with either of the two portions of the changes for the pro shop. So I think if there aren't any other questions from the petitioner, I think we're all set.
I think we're good.
All right, good luck then, and we'll look forward to seeing the application for the left portion when we come in June.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. At this point, I'll just let everyone know, just to back up one step, there was a caller who had called in during the administrative actions, just to remind everybody, the administrative actions are not public hearings, so we don't do comments from the public during that portion of our meeting. The hearings we do. So that's just informational, just to let everybody know. And then before we move on, just to let everyone know, if anyone who's online, several of the items for tonight's agenda requested to be continued to our June 8th meeting. Those include agenda item C, which is the proposed zoning bylaw amendments. So if anyone's on the line for those won't be heard tonight. They'll be heard during our June 8th meeting. Agenda item E, which is 2512 Main Street. They've also requested to be continued, as did 325 Marshall Street, which is agenda item F, and agenda item E, which is 600 Woobin Street. So the hearings that we will discuss tonight will be 181 Pine Street, 135 Pleasant Street, and 495 Woburn Street. So for anyone who's on the line for those or plans to get online, those will be heard. The others will be continued. So if you don't wish to remain, that's fine. You won't miss anything, and we'll make no decisions on those other items. So with that, I move on to agenda item C, which was to be the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. We requested to continue this to our June 8th meeting at 7 p.m. So do I have a motion to continue to 7 p.m. on June 8th?
So moved.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
All right, motion made. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
All right, motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Moving on to agenda item D, 181 Pine Street. This is definitive subdivision, open space, residential design. Do I have a motion to waive the public hearing?
So moved.
I have a motion made. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. All right, do we have anyone on for 181 Pine Street?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. This is David Plunkett, representing the applicant, Pine and Whipple LLC. On board tonight also is Matt Hammer, Mr. Hammer from Landplex, the engineer for the project. And I believe Mr. Andella, James Andella, is also online or on the phone as the principal of the applicant. As you indicated, Mr. Chairman, this is a open space residential design for the subdivision. We realized that there were, Mr. Hardiman had sent a letter, and Ms. McGinty, the town planner, had also sent a letter last Thursday relative to issues to be addressed. Probably the best way to handle this, I think, at this time is that I'll turn this over to Mr. Hammer from Landplex so that he may discuss the technical issues pertaining to the project.
Thank you, Attorney Plunkett. For the record, my name is Matt Hammer with Landplex Engineering and Surveying. I'm going to share a screen, which will be the permit plan set, so that I can walk through my presentation sheet by sheet. Can everyone see the cover sheet of the plan set that I have shared?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So as the board has seen before, we are proposing an open space residential subdivision per what we call the OSRD regulations, of which the required tract size is 3 acres. And this tract size is 4.826 acres. And as you recall, when we went through the determination of the yield at a previous planning board meeting, when we run through the calculations per your requirements, we end up with this chart that we're referencing here, where we end up with a yield of 4 individual lots. Each lot's required to have a minimum of 50 feet of frontage. You can't have a maximum of 50% of wetland of the open space, of which ours is 36.1%. And you also have to have minimum of 50% of the total tract to be open space. And in our case, it's 50.07 square feet of open space. I'm going to move on to the existing conditions plan. The existing conditions for the subject parcel is this individual parcel here, which was recently established through an approval not required plan that the planning board endorsed, which is the outline here of this individual lot. That lot itself has an area in the rear, which is a wetland area here. There's a high point here where there's a hill, where the water currently sheds to the northerly direction towards the wetland, and half of this water sheds in this direction towards Pine Street. Oops, excuse me. Sorry. Just getting used to this cursor here. There's 45.6 lineal feet of frontage here on Pine Street. And then there's also frontage off of Whipple here. There's a 200-foot wide, 250-foot wide electrical easement that's here. And there's power lines within that electrical easement that are here. This wetland line here has been established and through an approval, an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation with the Tewksbury Conservation Commission, of which an order of resource area delineation was granted for that, for those wetlands, and that's now on record at the Registry of Deeds. Moving to sheet 3 is the layout of the right-of-way and the individual lots. This is the 40-foot right-of-way here, which conforms to the right-of-way required for residential lots not exceeding 4 lots, and that's what our proposed subdivision is 4 lots. So we fall under the design standards for 4-lot subdivision. This is the layout of that right-of-way. This is a parcel here, which was a leftover piece of land, which we were identifying as parcel 3A-3. There's another parcel here, which is the drainage parcel, which is located here. Here is lot 1. Here with 86.4 lineal feet. This is a 10-foot wide or 20-foot wide utility easement. There'll be 10 feet on either side of each of these 2 lots that provides an easement in order to establish a drainage system back here for a drainage pipe, which I'll go over in a minute. This is lot 2 here. It has 60.05 lineal feet of frontage. This is lot 3. And this is lot 4 here. I should note that the required lot area for these parcels need to be in excess of 10,000 square feet. And lot 1 has 19,000 square feet. Generally, lot 2 has 17,500 square feet. Lot 3 has 18,880 square feet. And lot 4 has 24,147 square feet. And I should note that those lots predominantly are upland lots, except for this small amount of wetland that comes into the back portion of the largest lot in the subdivision, which has 24,000 square feet, and it does have just a small piece of wetland there. This remaining tract here is the primary open space tract here, which is 2.416 acres in size. This plan sheet here is sheet 4. And this sheet identifies the location of the pavement in layout form, which is here. This is going to have a vegetated island. There's a driveway here. Well, I'll start with lot 1, excuse me. There's a driveway here for lot 1 and the location of a dwelling, as well as the tree clearing proposed for that lot. This is lot 2 here with a driveway and a dwelling laid out. Lot 3 with a house and a dwelling and a driveway laid out. And this is lot 4 here with a dwelling and a driveway laid out here. This here is the outline of where there'll be a rain garden drainage system. And then that rain garden drainage system is going to overflow into a drainage easement, and then there's going to be a subsurface infiltration system located here. Moving on to the grading sheet. The sheet's pretty busy. I'm going to zoom in on it here. Generally, what's going to happen here is this drainage is going to come down into this rain garden area here. And then there's an overflow structure, a primary structure here, which will take the drainage system through this network of piping over to a subsurface drainage system here, where we located favorable testing with sandy soils that are predominantly in this area over here. That provides a good area for this water to infiltrate. This proposed single-family dwelling will also have a infiltration roof drain behind this building here, which is located here. Each of the lots will be serviced by sewer and water out into the utilities that are currently available out in Pine Street. And then the next sheet here is an erosion and sedimentation control plan, which has the erosion control line here, as well as the stockpiling areas and a construction entrance. And we'll also be presenting and talking about that plan in more detail with the Conservation Commission when we file a notice of intent filing, which we're intending to do right away. And that's the overview of the plans themselves. I don't know if the board wants me to walk through the engineering comments and the comments from the planning director, Mrs. McGinty, at this point, or to begin discussion with the board regarding the plans.
Why don't you run through those? Because if you list that you have no issue with whatever amount of those comments, then it might save the members from having to ask.
Sure, that sounds like a good idea. So I'm going to stay on this grading plan here. And the first comment from Kevin Hardiman, the town engineer, is he wanted to remove this leaching catch basin here.
Excuse me, Matt. Matt, are you pointing out, when you say here, are you pointing out what you're talking about?
Yes, I'm using my cursor. Can you see that, Mr. Fowler?
Very, very
No.
small. Very small.
No.
it is. Hold on. Can you see it now?
What lot are you on?
It's at Pine, it's at the roadway entrance to Pine Street. I'm sorry, do you see this? Do you see a cursor that I'm moving? There's a catch basin at the project entrance to the right-hand side as you're coming in.
Mr. Hammer.
Oh, can anybody see it?
So, Mr. Hammer, this is the chairman. The cursor is extremely small, even when
Oh, it is?
even when you increase the size of the plan.
Right.
The cursor is not getting any bigger. So I think it would be better if maybe you direct where you're talking about by saying it. You can still
Sure.
use the cursor, but I see what Mr. Fowler is talking about. It's very, very small and
Okay.
unlikely. It's probably, I'm trying to watch on the TV here, and I don't think the TV's picking it up any better. But I think
Gotcha.
probably better if you give verbal description of where you are in the plan.
Sure.
I wanted, to be honest, Steve,
Yes.
I wanted to ask that question 3 pages ago. When he was talking about the rain garden.
All right, so when we go back through, Mr. Hammond, maybe some of the members may ask you to go back on some of your items and
Sure.
maybe better point out where they are.
Absolutely.
All right, so we'll let you continue from here, and then if we have to backtrack, we'll do that.
So if you're coming in the project entrance drive from Pine Street, directly to the right-hand side when you're coming in, there's a proposed leaching catch basin that we proposed.
Right.
The town engineer had asked us if we could put in a deep sump catch basin and eliminate that leaching catch basin because it doesn't fall into design standards that would be acceptable to the DPW in engineering. So we've been able to do that. That'll be represented on a separate plan where we're going to replace that leaching catch basin with a full deep sump catch basin and direct that water through the rain garden, which is located 100 feet up into the roadway to the left-hand side.
Okay.
The next question references the bottom of the detention basin elevation, which is at elevation 128, and the seasonal high groundwater is 125.3. And we're going to make that correction. And Mr. Ryder, you'll know what I'm talking about. He's going to be doing the mounding calculation to ensure that detention basin has the required 2 feet of separation accompanied with a groundwater mounding calculation to it. The third item was conformance to the Massachusetts Stormwater Handbook related to 10% TSS credit on the rain garden. And we're going to be responding to that comment to show Mr. Hardiman that the way that this rain garden is designed will conform to that stormwater handbook. And that also applies to item number 4. Item number 5 calls out we had proposed a 6-inch sewer water main. We're going to update the plan to show that to be an 8-inch sewer. I'm sorry, did I say water main? A 6-inch sewer main. We're going to update our plan to make that sewer line an 8-inch sewer main. Item number 6.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Fowler.
Yes, I hate to bring this up again, but I just got a text message from, I'm not sure, and they said none of these documents are legible to the viewers for the Pine Street proposal.
All right, well, I just because I try to keep track of this as we go along, I've got the TV on in front of me. While I wouldn't say that they are the crispest of plan, they are there. The depictions are there, and the description from Mr. Hammer, I mean, I think that the best that we can do for the way the way we're doing this online and on the TV, I think maybe the more zoomed in you can be, Mr. Hammer, when you're talking about the plans, the better that's going to be for the TV audience, I think. And then maybe moving around the screen just because it'll let people see a little bit better. But I understand if someone's, rushing off, they're not as crisp as they would be
Right.
hand or, or that kind of thing. But whatever we can do to try to make it as easy for the TV audience as possible.
Understood. Again, if I need to be more clear, I can do that, but I'm assuming that everyone is seeing what I'm seeing on the screen.
Yeah, I mean, obviously on the computer it's fine. The TV is just a little less crisp.
Oh, it's more depending on the type of television you may be seeing it on.
Correct. I think that must be what it is.
They may not have a 72-inch TV.
All right, Mr. Hammer, you can continue. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So item number 6 is the subdivision rules that require a sidewalk to be installed. And we are going to put a sidewalk along the right-hand side of the roadway, which is the easterly side of the roadway. And we're going to put a sidewalk all the way around that right side to get to lot 1. So it'll go out in front of lot 4, 3, 2, and over to 1. So we're going to add that to the plan. The next comment is number 7, and is requiring some additional testing. We've gone out a couple times with the town to do testing. And we're going to set up some additional testing in order to provide some additional testing in the infiltration trench areas. So we'll be coordinating that with the town this week. Number 8 is due to some ledge outcroppings on and around the area, the applicant shall perform test pits in those areas. We do have some large rocks in and through this area. We've done some test pits in the areas that you would think might be ledge because of these ledge outcroppings. And, we'll do an additional soil test in those areas and address that comment for number 8 as well. But we don't believe that we actually have true ledge on this property. The next comment, number 9, the applicant shall provide a roadway profile showing the geometric information such as slopes and vertical curves for the proposed roadway. It may not be, just might be an oversight, but that vertical profile and geometry is at the top of that grading sheet. So I'll make sure I go over that with Mr. Hardiman related to the geometry. The next question was site distance. We in fact did go out and conduct site distancing, and we're going to be providing that on the updated plan being brought back to the board. And we'll go over that site distance comment with Mr. Hardiman. Just to bring you up to speed, we do have a site distance of 181 lineal feet in the westerly direction, and we have 389 lineal feet in the easterly direction. And the AASHTO requirements for that is 155. So we exceed that by 26 feet. Moving on to number 10. Oh, sorry, we just did that. Number 11, there's a comment related to the water main size connection. Apparently, there's an asbestos cement piping out in Pine Street, as well as I'm sure many of the streets in Tewksbury. And we're going to be proposing a proposal to Mr. Hardiman to address that specific question in order to set up our piping coming into that existing piping with a full 8-inch ductile iron configuration, so that when that piping at some point in the future does get upgraded, it will tie into our proposed piping. And then we also need to discuss whether this project is going to be needing to make a connection all the way out into Whipple Street, which is going to be quite an endeavor. But that's what our intention is to tie into Pine Street, just like every other project would for the existing piping there. Item number 12 is an open space at the rear of Lot 4. This area is inaccessible through the open space without traversing through the wetlands. And he's referring to a small piece of land behind Lot 4. And if need be, we're going to provide an easement so the town can actually access the rear of Lot 4. And we'll provide that easement in order for there to be accessibility behind Lot 4. And I think that'll also address a question that came up by Ms. McGinty as well. The proposed project is going to require some waivers. Moving to number 13, we'll provide a list of waivers to the board to address that comment. And then the remaining of those comments are the typical comments related to a drain layers license in the town of Tewksbury needs to be hired, as well as the water connection and physical permits that are needed for the project. I should note that the land disturbance permit, I think on my end, there's been a little bit of confusion how the board likes to address those land disturbance permits. Typically, we would address those land disturbance permits after we get a project approved from the planning board and or the Conservation Commission. And then we would go through that normal stormwater pollution prevention plan process that the town of Tewksbury has for all projects that have a disturbance of greater than 1 acre. But if we want to include that land disturbance permit as part of this, we can, or address that just pre-construction through that stormwater pollution prevention plan process.
It's been mostly the board has granted that waiver sort of a matter of course because we know it's going to be handled through conservation. But right. It's typically still applied for in the list of waivers so that we can address it. But we know conservation is the one who's ultimately going to be dealing with the issue, which is why we just sort of grant them as a matter of course.
And we can most certainly directly address that with the Conservation Commission when we file the notice of intent filing, if it's better to have that permit facilitated by the Conservation Commission.
All right, and then are you going to run through the town planner's comments as well?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
So that comment number 1 is a final HOA agreement prior to the that needs to be submitted to the planning board. I'll be working with Mr. Plunkett, Attorney Plunkett, on that to draft some documents for access to the open space parcel, inclusive documents for the easement to access the rear of Lot 4 and so on and so forth. So we'll make sure we get that prepared with Attorney Plunkett and submit that to the planning director. The next one is a postal box needs to be depicted on the plan. We've been submitting documents to the postal department, and we're still in the process of getting a final determination on that. Comment number 3 is, provide information on who will retain the ownership of the open space parcel. We want the town of Tewksbury to take ownership of that open space parcel. And our HOA documents will also speak to providing access additionally through Lot 3 and Lot 4 to that open space parcel.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Fowler.
I guess there's a lot of interest on Pine Street by some abutters. And I don't know what can be done. If you'd like me to read this message, I'm not going to say who it's from, but if they get online, they can do it themselves. They're in two different areas, two different laptops. Sister's on cable next door on Pine Street. We cannot zoom in on the documents at all. They are not legible to follow along with the meeting. Pine Street abutters are chiming in on the same issue. So I guess there's quite a bit of interest out there because of the water issues that might come up later on. Just to give you a heads up.
All right. Well, I mean, obviously the folks at home wouldn't really be able to zoom in because it's shared from Mr. Hammer. He's the one who's addressing the size of the plans. But I think, I mean, by all indications, I would suspect that this won't be something that will be finished this evening anyways. So perhaps we can ensure that before the continued discussion, that we might have some additional plan pages that could be larger on sections of the plan. That way, if someone wants to talk about something specific in some of those areas, we'd be able to use different pages that are only a section, but would be larger and could be easier identified. Mr. Hammer, will that be possible?
Yeah, you're reading my mind.
Yes, absolutely. And I can work with, Anna McGinty as to maybe which items need to be blown up, but we most certainly can do that.
All right. Well, we'll see how the comments go and then maybe go from there. Obviously, we can probably guesstimate the hot topic areas. Obviously, Mr. Fowler just pointed out some of those water areas are going to be things that people are going to be interested in. So we'll continue on with the meeting this evening and hope that we can have a additional plan set that can address some of the people's concerns about what they can and can't see or would wish to see.
Thank you, Mr. Hammer, and thank you for the input out in the TV land.
You're welcome, Mr. Fowler. I know each meeting has its own challenges with this platform, so we want to make sure we accommodate for individual focus areas that we need to so that people can be informed the way they should be.
Good, and I thank you.
All right, Mr. Hammer, over to you.
Item number 5 is any parcels not intended to be non-buildable shall be revised in the plans. We'll make sure we address that. Number 6 is the applicant needs to provide more information on the road to be private or ownership provided to the town. Our intention is for the town to take ownership of this roadway. We feel as though with the number of lots, the infrastructure within the road, that this road would be suitable for the town to take ownership of this road and all its utilities. The next item is item number 8. It says the item does not meet the affordable housing threshold of 10%. I don't know if that was an acknowledgement that this project doesn't meet the need to meet it because we don't cross that threshold of the 10%.
Hi, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Gunther.
Yeah, that was an acknowledgement that a review that it doesn't require them to have an affordable unit because they're under the threshold. So just to clarify for everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. The next, number 9, is land disturbance permit, which we discussed. Number 10 is a waiver letter, which we discussed. We'll provide to you. Number 11 requires trees and landscaping, which we'll get to you, some more detail on that. And then The next one is requires the subdivision install a street sign and light post. We'll most certainly update the plans in that regard. We've been talking, I think we have approval of a street name right now, which is Kenzie Marie Way. And we'll be updating the next set of plans to represent the new street name also. And I can put it to the chair for
All right, Mr.
questions.
Hammond, one other, before I open it up to the members, one other, in our packet, we have a few comments from an abutter. Do you have those?
If you're talking about the comment letter from David Hopkinson, yes, I do have it. Yeah.
All right, do you want to address any of that now, or do you want to hold on? I'll give you the opportunity if you want to do any of that now.
Yeah, I can address the comments letter now. Generally, there's a depression. I think it'll be easier if we go to sheet 2. I'm trying to scroll down here. If everybody is on sheet 2, there's a low-lying area here, which is this elevation 128. Are you with me in the locus of that area? It's right.
I've got it on my plan.
It's at the rear of his property to the northeast corner. There's a low-lying spot of land that's mostly on our property and partially on Mr. Hopkinson's property. And that is located here. I want to speak to the board that these wetlands and the site has been reviewed through an abbreviated resource area delineation. This project and this property has been walked through the town's wetland consultant through that, what we call the ANRAD process. There's a file or a review that was done by Wetlands and Land Management that was retained by the town of Tewksbury as part of that conservation filing, where they walk through and say that they've walked through this property. They've determined that there's no other wetland areas on the property, and the Conservation Commission issued an approval to that regard, and that's now on record at the Registry of Deeds. Yes, this area does get inundated with water in the spring, as well as a lot of other low-lying areas. But this area does not constitute a wetland per se. That was alluded to in the letter, but it is a low spot. For some time, someone's been dumping leaves here for quite a long time, and what happens is the leaves have prevented infiltration into the soils, and it does retain some water here in the spring. The runoff comes off of essentially half of the, a big portion of the property, and does flow towards the Pine Street direction. And in fact, I'm confident that this project's going to reduce that low-lying area issue related to his comments. Additionally, in his comments, he's looking for some landscaping detail, which we're going to be providing. He has some grading issues related to Lot 1. which we'll make sure we address. Lot 1, if you recall, was going to have some subsurface infiltration to take the roof runoff, as well as some infiltration trenches on the driveway. So we feel as though there's going to be a decrease in runoff coming from that hill that's currently coming down onto Mr. Hopkinson's property. He also wants to see if there's any going to be any proposed fencing and planting onto his property, which we'll make sure we identify there. We're trying to leave as much of the vegetation to the rear of Lot 1 as possible, and also vegetation that'll be on his lot line from Lot 1 to his property. There's going to be a wooded buffer between the proposed dwelling on Lot 1 to his house. So we're anticipating that should alleviate his concerns that way, as well as the concerns of the vehicle headlight detail that he has on one of his sheets related to headlights and things of that nature from the roadway. And if you notice, there's going to be there's going to be a whole existing buffer between the cul-de-sac and his land that's a wooded area currently right now on his property. And that's my those are my comments related to his comments.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hammond. Anything else from the petitioner before I open it up to the board? Hearing none. Just a comment before the board members start for our tech support here. If we have people, it sounds like we may have some folks who want to discuss this matter. I just want to make sure that we're clearing the lines so that the folks who want to call in on this item can get through, and anyone who is on the line that's been holding for any future items on the agenda, that we clear them off and ask them to call back in when that item comes up, just to make sure we don't cause anybody who can't get through for this matter. Well, with that, I will open it up to the board. We'll start with Mr. Battaglia. We have Mr. Battaglia. Why don't we start with Mr. Fowler?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I got you.
Oh, we have Mr. Battaglia. So we'll start with Mr. Battaglia after one.
All right, I'm sorry, I have myself muted there.
That's all right. It happens to me too.
I just wanted to commend Mr. Hammer on a nice presentation tonight. Pretty thorough, pretty, you went through all the issues Mr. Hardiman had, which was some of my concerns. So I have to give you some commendation for doing that page by page and item by item. So thank you for that. One of the questions I had is who is going to maintain the island? I mean, we've had islands in town before that go unmaintained. So who's going to maintain the center island in the cul-de-sac?
That would be maintained by the town, presumably. But I can discuss that with Attorney Plunkett and Mr. Hardiman on that.
I've seen a number of those that are not maintained by anybody, and they become not pleasant to the eye. So I don't know if we can get a homeowners group together to do that or something. I don't know, but
sure,
that was one of my concerns looking at the plans, and
yeah.
So if we could address that somehow, some way, I'd appreciate that on my end. So other than that, I'm all set right now, Mr. Chairman. I think most of the questions I had were answered by Mr. Hammer in his presentation. So thank you.
All right, Mr. Plunkett, did you have a comment?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just to address Mr. Battaglia's question that even if the way becomes a public way owned by the town, we could talk with town council to see about establishing something within the homeowners association to give them control over that island for the purpose of maintaining whatever type of landscaping goes there, or, you know, I know in the past, in lieu of that, there have been some proposals where they take away the island, but I think it's more aesthetically pleasing to have the island there. That's something, with further discussion, we can come up with a conclusion.
Sounds great. Thank you, Mr. Plunkett.
All set, Mr. Vitale?
Yes, I am all set. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Fowler?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Mr. Plunkett. I hate hot top, big wide open area for you're gonna land a plane on, or a helicopter. I'd rather see the island if it's, I've seen it in other towns where the people in the association or in the area of that island are given the responsibility, one way or the other, of maintaining it. And it's not a lot. Usually it's just cutting the grass or, and what they try to do is put long-term, not plantings, but yeah, long-term plantings that are short in height and just attractive. And instead of putting bark moats, they put stone in. And the stone is there forever. So I would look at it along that line. And again, I agree with Mr. Plunkett on that. I think Mr. Hammond has done a marvelous job on trying to explain this. I wish everybody could see what he was doing. Sometimes when you're looking at a computer screen, you don't get the sharpness and the size definition so that you can understand what's going on. So I can understand the public addressing that. Hopefully we'll get to a point where we can have this in a meeting again, a regular meeting, not knowing when that is. Do I have any questions? Not really at this time. I think I'm going to wait till the next meeting and go from there. I think a lot of those things that crossed my mind have been addressed by either myself or some of the other members. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
All right,
Thank you.
Mr. Delaney.
Yeah, I have a few questions about the street. Have you done the work with the fire department yet for that rotary?
Yes.
Will the truck be able to turn?
Yes, Mr. Delaney, we'll be making sure we get a sign off from the fire department for a swept path analysis for the fire truck to go around the cul-de-sac.
I don't know if I'm jumping the gun here asking these questions, but you have the road. The road is going to be 40 feet. Does that include the sidewalk? Is the sidewalk going to take up some of that road?
No.
Yes, if you mean the right-of-way is 40 feet, just to clarify, the pavement itself is going to be 22 feet, and then we'll have a sidewalk within that right-of-way, if that answers your question.
Okay, I guess, and I guess the wetlands part of this, you say you walk this, is conservation taking a look at this? I mean, I got pictures of a guy rowing a boat in the backyard. I was just curious if, you know, I know I spoke to you and you're saying it's a buildup of leaves, but geez, if you can row a boat back there, that's a lot of work.
I am sure at one day there might have been a very large storm event that might have caused there to be an inundation of water for there to be a boat to float on it, as in the picture. But this area dries out completely in the throughout the year. And this area's been looked at through the ANRAD process and does not constitute as a wetland resource area.
I see. I guess I can save some of my questions till later. But, you know, as I'm looking at this, you know, your presentation was excellent. Everything seems to be going in order. I had a question about the center island and the rotary. I would like to see somebody take care of it. But as long as you're working with conservation on the water in the back, I guess I'll be all set if they approve what you want to do there. But it just seems, you know, he's got pictures that he's showing me of the wetlands and whatever, how close. And another thing is, you know, the whole project is behind 171. I don't know how it got to be 181, but the whole project is 171. So I can see why the owner would have a concern. And I guess that's it for me tonight, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Do we have Mr. Ryder on the line still? I think Mr. Ryder may have had to drop off for a moment, so we'll move on to myself. Yeah, I mean, I think most of the questions, I mean, if I understood it correctly, as Mr. Hammond went through it, don't seem to have any issues with any of the comments that were presented, either from the town engineer or the town planner. So I suppose we'll wait till the next meeting to see how many of those have been addressed and put onto the plans as requested, and make sure they meet the requirements that have been put forth. And if so, then we probably won't have too many to deal with at the next meeting on those, but really no questions about them at this point. On the center island, I'm with Mr. Fowler. I have no problem with the center islands as long as they're maintained. I know DPW in the past, the roads that DPW is going to have to deal with and maintain, have indicated, an interest in not having them, partly due to the plowing issues and whatnot. So obviously, I want to make sure that the petitioner has those conversations so that if the island is going to go in, that it's done in a way that DPW will sign off on, and then obviously the maintenance of both the island itself, both from a landscaping standpoint and from a from the curbing or whatever that's in there, so that it's going to be taken care of going forward, and it doesn't become an eyesore, whether it's from the deterioration of the island itself or the landscaping within it. And if that's the case, then I'm fine with it, as long as that stuff is taken care of and, all the T's crossed and the I's dotted on that. And other than that, I think I'm all set with comments at this point. Do we have anyone on the line who wishes to comment on this?
We do, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so we'll just take them in order. Who do we have first?
You can go whenever you're ready.
All right,
We
so
haven't addressed Mr. Ryder's questions or concerns.
I think Mr. Ryder had to drop off. So
He joined.
He's on now.
oh, he came back. All right, I'm sorry, Mr.
Yeah,
Ryder,
Steve,
you're up.
I had one question about the island as well, Mr. Chair. I found it, in my experience, they're twofold. One, the islands don't get maintained, but also two, they become very expensive when it's just a large area of pavement. So I think, ideally, I think if you can put that in along the lines of some sort of agreement that that's maintained, I think that's a nice feature.
Yeah, so Mr. Ryder, thank you, sorry. We will put that maintenance on the island to the homeowners association.
Okay, all right, that's perfect. Thank you. Other than that, I'm good for now, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ryder. All right, so with that, now we'll open it up to the public. Do we have someone on the line?
We do, whenever you're ready.
I'm ready.
Mr. Hockington?
You want me to speak now?
Yes.
Sir, if you would just give your name and your address for the record, and then you'll have an opportunity to present whatever you want.
I've got my phone turned up. It's very hard to hear you. My name is David Hockington at 171 Pine Street, Tewksbury.
All right, sir, the floor is yours.
Okay, again, it's very hard to hear you. Let's stay with the wet area, the floodplain. It's not the leaves, right? I disagree with that. If you notice the pictures, if you can locate them for you, the rowboat, that was taken in 03. Okay. And the others were taken in 17 and then current. Now, these are brief history. I lived was raised in Tewksbury, 171 Pine Street, and I did here like 75 years, all right? And pond of that flood area has been in existence before I was born. And it's been like that all the time, not because of the leaves, because that's the way it is. It might have built up over time, but the elevation of the mud, the floodplains, just saying, if you know the picture in the boat, it identifies the pipe fauna, the top of my property. If you know it's relatively the same. If you go through all the other fixtures that are located in the northeast corner of my property, you notice the water is pretty much the same. So over the years, and because a few leaves dropped in it, hasn't changed the elevation of the water. It's true that the water goes away in the summertime. It stays about 6 months a year, but it's a drain. It's an area drain pond that's necessary. So I hope you people look at that. Now, this question: when did the conservation people walk through the property? Was it in July and August, or when exactly did they do it? Because not necessarily that this has the vegetation of a wetland, but it certainly has a flood area. And the flood area is necessary for that area of my land. For example, when you substitute that water for a cul-de-sac, the cul-de-sac will be 4 feet above 130, which is above my property by 4 or 5 feet. Now that becomes a wall, and I'm firmed up with the rain drain thing, and that becomes a wall. So the water on my property, you have a couple of 3-inch rainstorms, will be flooded. There's no place to go now because my area of water can't go anywhere except back up. And I can anticipate a wet cellar, you know. These are some of my concerns. But dealing with the rain garden area, there's an outlet on my property. How did that get there? What they're trying to do is make their property part of my property. Nobody's ever approached me, and that's just going to flood my property more. And I say more because you got a drainage system that's going to fail. It's going to clog up, and it's going to spill over my land. It's guaranteed. Maybe not this year, next year, the year before, after rather, but it will do that. Just to tell you where I come from, there's a situation across the street from me in Stoneham, and the pipe area cuts through 5 people. Nobody wants to take responsibility. It's plugged up, partially plugged up to a pit that if it doesn't get a heavy rain, the person at the end, which in my case would be me, has to pump it up over onto the street. In my case, I can't even do that because the street pitches towards me. I'm just so against all of that stuff. And you might say, well, we'll put that into an association. Well, that's great. That's great. Then the association is doing it. What do I do? Then you go to court. Then you have bills. I don't want to be involved in that stuff. I just think when the developer does a development, it should be in the development. So those are the areas I want to be addressed.
Okay, Mr. Hammer, do you have any comments on those?
I can say we're not in a floodplain. We've actually have even performed the isolated land subject to flooding calculations, and it doesn't meet that threshold, of which I think Mr. Ryder will know what I'm talking about there. We'll be submitting calculations if necessary for that. Mr. Hopkinton, while I do appreciate his concerns, that water does flood behind his property, but our drainage system's going to be providing a network in order to take that water now away from his property, as it's shown on this plan. So I think his
when it doesn't do that, it goes on my property. I'm telling you that system you're providing is going to be clogged up, and it's going to be a nuisance.
Mr. Hopkinton, if you wouldn't mind just holding off on any further comment until Mr. Hammer finishes, and then I'll let you speak again.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay.
No, that's okay. It's just, it's tough with us all on the line. So, Mr. Hammer, if you just continue, and then I'll let Mr. Hopkinton speak again.
The other thing I'd like to just make a clarification on that, Mr. Hopkinton was notified during the abbreviated notice of resource delineation filing with conservation. And it would have been helpful for him to express those immediate concerns related to this depression at that time, but he was notified by registered mail. The other thing is that there will be an operation and maintenance document, Mr. Hopkinton, which the town's gonna be maintaining that drainage system. And like I said, the low-lying area is a low-lying area and is a analysis point for the focus of our drainage study. But what I can say is that there is great soils where we're networking this water to go. We've done a multitude of soil testing, and there's a very large deposits of sand materials and gravel materials where we are proposing to bring this drainage system. So I'm hoping that'll help alleviate the current flooding issues that you have right now on your property.
All right, Mr. Hopkinson, if you have any other comments, you can speak again.
Can I speak?
Yes, you may.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, I didn't go to the conservation because last time I heard it was a single building lot, okay? And nobody is ever going to build near or that, so I felt confident that things would have happened. Somebody said, Mr. Hopkinson, you're going to get a subdivision right there with a cul-de-sac in the middle of the water. Yes, I would have attended, but I give everyone the benefit of the doubt. But I just can't fathom that you'd be putting a cul-de-sac there. That was why I didn't attend the meeting. It would have been helpful. It also been helpful to tell me what was going to go on there. I thought it was going to be a house lot, and you said no for the small lot subdivision, which is good. But the thing is, not there, not in the cul-de-sac. And as far as the drainage in the soil, okay, I agree. I mean, that's a good place to put it. The fact is that you're creating a system that's going to need maintenance. It's not going to get maintenance. It's got to spill over. But that spillover, I don't accept. I don't even accept the drainage if anybody's listening. But you can't put that on my property. You just can't do that. And then we have to discuss the other stuff.
All right, Mr. Hopkinson, I think now I've heard you. I think you've said it twice now. Are you saying that you think that the rain garden is on your property?
Pardon?
Are you saying that you think the rain garden is on your property?
No, the rain garden still is on my property. It's 1.6, I think it is, on its height. So when the rain garden fills up, it's less than 2 feet to hop over to my property.
Okay, I'm sorry. I misunderstood. Okay. All right.
Yeah, no problem.
All right.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Hammer, you mean it does show in your plan the riprap overflow outlet property. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's an overflow where, yep.
Oh, it is an overflow where. So if in fact, as the resident stating, you mean, if in fact, and I deal with these drainage swales and systems on a regular basis, they do need maintenance, and they do fail. And there is a path of least resistance, and that's why you install the weir. And he's stating, his statement is true, that weir will ultimately property.
Hello?
Go ahead.
Mr. Hopkinson, hold on one second. We have Mr. Hammer respond.
That's what I'm saying.
Mr. Hammer?
Your elevation is 131.9. Is your overflow the weir?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and the elevation?
It's at 132.
132. Okay, well, the plans state 131.9 roughly. So 132. You know, if it does in fact overflow, it is going to head towards his property. There's no.
That's correct. I can't stop where the water wants to go.
But I understand. No, you can't. But the resident is correct. You cannot impact the MS4 requirements. You cannot impact another individual's property with the flow of water from development or subdivision or another single parcel. Am I correct? That is part of the MS4 guidelines.
Which is impact. I don't believe it's impacting.
Well, you've designed the overflow to abut property, and trying to go that way. If that system does fail, so it doesn't breach towards the roadway, it's going to go out the weir. That's what it's designed for.
That's correct.
So it is designed to go onto his property if that system backs up.
That's correct.
That can't happen.
Well, that's what happens now. He has water
I understand that, but you can't make the condition. You're basically creating you can't create another condition. And according to this design, that's being created. If that system fails, or there's a backup from the line, or soils become saturated in a significant spring or a wet spring, or after a bad winter, that system ultimately will have an outfall onto his property.
If you just hold on, I'm looking at something here. Excuse me. So in the 100-year storm, the peak elevation's at 131.03 or 131.
Okay.
And that emergency overflows at 132. So it's the whole system is designed to accommodate the 100-year storm without breaching that weir.
Oh, I understand the design criteria, but I still have a bit of concern that the weir is potential overflow onto the resident's property. I understand there's a condition there now that that back parcel, as you see in the pictures, the back parcel does flood. The picture's not lying. So the impact, there's a potential impact there.
Just like all designs that are redirecting water to reduce the preconditioned flow of where the water is going, we're always designing systems to reduce or meet those pre-existing flows. And there's always the chance when systems fail that they're going to go back to their original, they're going to go back to where the water originally wanted to go. But
And it, well, according to the pictures, the original design where the water wanted to go is where the cul-de-sac is now. So by creating that cul-de-sac, the water has to go somewhere. Because your elevation of your cul-de-sac is 133.7, I believe, at road grade.
yeah, it's at 130,
So-
it's at 135.
Okay, so 135 is your road grade elevation, and so the overflow elevation is 131. So the ability to go back after building that cul-de-sac, it can't go there. It can't go back to the original location. So it's going to impact something. So the impact is going to be at 131.9 or 131 or 132 is the ultimate, because it can't go to the first lot on the left, because that's an elevation of 134. It looks like at edge of foundation, and goes down to 130. And that parcel is being sloped towards his property. You look at the second one, you're at 134 as well. Everything slopes away from the highest elevation is 136 on your properties on the 4 parcels. And then everything slopes away. So the potential of the water going back to the original location can't. So it's going to follow, it's going to follow into the system when the system ultimately is to his property is, what's the grade? Have you taken grades at what his parcel is at?
Yes. His parcel. Mr.
130.
Mr. Hopkinton has a basically a 20 to 30 foot wide swale that swales all the water behind his property, and then it heads towards the traditionally towards the power easement, or to lot 181. But essentially all the subsurface soils as you come off of Pine Street through 181 into that electrical easement is a massive deposit of sand and gravels. So I don't know what that water was doing historically behind his house, but that's where it's channelized to go now.
Right. Do you have, Mr. Hammond, do you have the existing, what's the elevation you're raising that cul-de-sac to? You're bringing it up to 135. What's the existing? What's your cut and fill that's going to be there?
So I have it goes from 134 down to 128.
Okay. So
it goes to 136.
what is it existing? What's the existing prior to you doing any fill? What is that at depth?
It ranges
from existing right now?
Yeah, 136 down to 128.
Okay.
I should say more like 134, excuse me, Mr. Ryder.
Okay, so ultimately it is dropping back down towards that parcel.
That's right. He has a significant amount of runoff that comes down to that low point, which is predominantly on our property. But it does want to swale behind Mr. Hopkinson's house.
Okay, can you redesign that to take that swale and put it into your system, and then ultimately take it back to the the inflow basin out back to the wetlands.
Right, so what we're thinking is gonna happen when the system goes in, we're gonna be wicking out all that current inundation of water back out into our system.
Well, I'm just concerned because you've got 128 at the low point in that within the info basin.
That's correct.
So you're roughly, a foot and a half, maybe 2 feet tops. But what you're also grabbing is all of the potential flow off of the first parcel off of the cul-de-sac down towards that swale. So you're ultimately taking everything, pulling it into the swale and then back out of that swale.
I lost you there, but on lot one.
What's being said here, and I don't see a swale coming anywhere along the back of my property. Exactly. Could you explain again what you're trying to say? I've got an overflow that's on my property now. How are you going to redirect that through the cul-de-sac and out to the back?
Want to do an easement for him out behind.
And that's what I'm looking at about Hopkinson, about taking that, what is somewhat of what Mr. Hammer's calling a swale off the backside of your property, and redirect that into the drainage system and ultimately take it out back to that proposed overflow infiltration basin out back.
You'll have the overflow, right?
Right.
So,
well, I think they would have to readdress the overflow.
The basin's going to get filled up. It's going to get blocked. It's going to come over. Now, where are you directing that? I don't want on my property.
Well, that's what I'm working on, Mr. Hopkinson, taking that.
Across the back, I don't see any swale.
So, Mr. Ryder.
The swale and put it back in the rain.
Mr. Hopkinson, can you hold on for 1 second? Mr. Hammer, what were you starting to say?
Yeah, so I think what you're saying, Mr. Ryder, is that we could put in a drain onto the Hopkinson property and actually relieve his current flooding issues and take it out with our water. We could do that.
Yes, that's what I'm looking to do. Instead of using the overflow, put an in. If you can bring an inlet in. And take that out of Mr. Hopkinson property and take it ultimately out to the back, out to the, what you call, where you had, good soil out into the back near the wetland buffer on the infiltration, your proposed basin. Mr. Hopkinson, would that be something that'd be acceptable to you?
Well, something to think about, but the problem I have also, too, I got a 4-lot subdivision back there with a cul-de-sac 4.5 feet high, which in turn, you're going to have lighting coming over this way and that way. So what I'm saying is, basically, I'd like to keep everything that they have on their side of the fence, and I'd like to keep my side of the fence virgin. That's what I'm saying. It's nice to help people out and stuff, but they were just throwing this around. So I'm at this point, I'm saying, let's stay on his side of the fence, I'll stay on mine, but if he has a proposal, sketch it out, let's look at it.
Yeah, we could do that, Mr. Hopkinson. We could do a proposal for you to show how we could improve the drainage at the rear of your property. And then obviously we would incorporate into our project at no cost to you.
That's nice, except I'm going to have to maintain it too, I just assume.
Well,
but like I say, let's take a look at it and see what happens.
Mr. Hammer, I think if you can do that, is there potential to take that in lot 1? You see how if you can use part of lot 1 where put an easement within lot 1 and take it into the corner of the proposed rain garden?
Well, what I want to do is I have to take a look at it and take a look at the hydraulics on it. And then come up with what I think would be the best solution for that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're
All right,
very
so-
welcome.
Also, Mr. Chairman, sorry for relaying that.
Easier to just hash it out now. So then,
Okay.
Mr. Hopkinson, I have you and Mr. Hammer on behalf of the petitioner. We'll have you guys discuss that offline in the interim between now and our next meeting and see where you guys, where you guys can get on the same page or see what you guys can come up with. Because obviously it's not something that's going to be settled this evening. So I think, you guys have been talking about what you might or might not be able to do regarding the drainage.
And Chairman, we also have Mr. Hopkinson's phone number too, and we can.
Yeah, yes, correct.
Contact him directly and summarize the board with those discussions.
All right, very good. All right, Mr. Hopkinson, are you all set now for right now?
Well, just a couple other things.
Okay.
Pick up later, perhaps. It's one. We talked about the grade, but the height of the building itself. I did a quick sketch. I gave two people. They gave a basement, finished floor, and finished floor, first finished floor, and they did a sketch up, and it's going to be towering above my house. And if it's white, it's even going to be worse. So I just wondered if we could look at that, maybe come up with something different than that, and maybe a darker color. And I'm assuming that's, I'm just saying that. I do a sketch with a figure down below, and I tell you just look right up to the heavens. And I don't want to ask me if you're using that as a transfer point for its landing, okay?
Okay, so if I understood, just to summarize that, my understanding, if I've got it right, you're just discussing that from where your house is, looking up to the Lot 1 house, you're just concerned about how much of that you'll see. Is that accurate?
Okay, okay. I got half of that, the phone. I'll say, I didn't get half of it, though.
Okay, all right. So then I think that might also be something that would be, hold on one second. So that would be something maybe, Mr. Hammond, just from a screening standpoint of discussion of what can be done from landscaping and screening to see if we can't alleviate some of that concern. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right, Mr. Hopkinson, is there anything else?
Mr. Chairman.
Sorry?
Hello?
Yes, Mr. Hopkinson, do you have anything else?
Yeah, hi. Is there any chance of getting the conservation to take another skip through and take a peek at what we have at that cul-de-sac?
Well, we don't control what conservation does. If you want to discuss something with conservation, you'll have to get in contact with them.
Okay, all right.
All right, are you all set otherwise, Mr. Hopkinson?
Yeah, I think so for now.
All right, well, we appreciate all your comments, and like I said, hopefully you and the petitioner will have an opportunity to speak in between now and our next meeting.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I just want to go back to Mrs. McGinty's letter.
Yes.
If we could just quickly, I forgot, I skipped over, not intentionally, item number 7, which calls for, whether there's a traffic engineering needed related to this project.
Okay.
And I'm requesting that I don't believe that there would be a need for traffic engineering on this due to this only being a 4-lot subdivision.
So Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Ms. McGinty.
this is Ann McGinty.
Go ahead.
So the town engineer is requiring a traffic memo for the development. However, my comment was that the planning board, in the town engineer's opinion, it's not necessary for a peer review of the traffic memo once it's submitted. However, he defers to the planning board if the planning board wants a peer review of that. So that's what that comment was.
All right. I'll check with the other members. if they feel that there's any need for that, but I can't, for a 4-lot subdivision, it would be surprising. But do any of the members have any strong feelings on that? Feeling like they need a peer review for this? Doesn't sound like it.
No.
All right, so then we'll just stick with the memo then. All right, do we have anybody else on the line who wants to discuss this matter?
No callers yet, Mr. Chairman, but the stream's probably closer to 2 minutes behind tonight for some reason, so I'd give it just a little bit of time.
All right, that's asking me to stretch for a while. All right. That's
Mr.
fine.
Chairman, I have a comment if I could, please.
Yes, Mr. Battaglia.
I would like that we include Mr. Hardeman in these discussions about the drainage issues and so forth and so on. And make sure we get his take on what we're looking at trying to do here.
Yeah, I mean, I have no issue with, if you want to keep him in the loop. But I
Yeah.
mean, again, when we do these, we do them by the numbers, and that's what we ask the town engineer to look at. So
Yeah.
like Mr. Hammer earlier was saying, when you run the numbers, it meets the criteria. But then to Mr. Ryder's point, there's sort of that disconnect between, so the numbers make it sound like it's fine, and then what might happen in real life practice. So I'm okay with keeping Mr. Hardeman in the loop, but I don't want to have him deviate too far from, checking the numbers the way they're required versus giving an opinion on, what might happen. You know what I mean? I feel like that part's for us, and Mr. Hardeman is confirming that the numbers
Sure,
work.
I understand. Yeah, I
Okay.
agree.
All right. So that's fine. Okay. All right. So I feel like Mr. Fratalia and I definitely stretched long enough there. Do we have anyone else on the line who wants to comment?
No callers, Mr. Chairman, and we are caught up.
All right. Excellent. So with that, I'll bring it back to the board. Does the board have any other comments or questions at this time?
I'm all set.
All right.
All set for now, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All set.
All right. Very good. Then with that, what is the pleasure of the board at this time?
Continue.
All
Motion
right.
to continue, Mr. Chairman, yeah.
So we take motion to continue to 7:20 on June 8th. So I have a motion made. Do I have a second?
Second.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, before you complete that.
Yes.
This is Ramsey.
Yes.
I think for 7:20, I think it's already booked up for 1880 Main Street for the June 8th meeting.
Oh, was that updated? Okay, I'm sorry. So what do we have now listed at 7?
So
now?
just so on the safe side, maybe 7:25.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so we have a motion to continue this to 7:25 on June 8th. And do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. All right, thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you,
All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Fowler.
Yeah, on June 8th, everybody should bring a bag lunch.
All right, we will take that under advisement.
Good one,
That would be a good
Bob.
idea. All right, so moving on to agenda item E, which is 2512 Main Street. The applicant is requested to have this meeting continued to our meeting on June 8th. We have a motion to continue that to 7:05 on June 8th.
So moved.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
All right, motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Moving on to agenda item F, which is 325 Marshall Street. The applicant has requested to have this continued to our June 8th meeting as well. Do we have a motion to continue that to 7:10? We have a motion.
So
Do I have a
moved.
second? Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Moving on to agenda item G, 600 Woobin Street. Applicant has requested to be continued to our June 8th meeting as well. Can I have a motion to continue that to 7:15 on June 8th?
So moved.
Second.
Hello?
Second.
Y- Seems like there might be a web
Still on?
issue, right? Yeah, it may be a web issue, Stephen. Is it back?
Oh, there I am. I think I'm back.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes,
Sorry.
you are.
So we were continuing that one to 7:15 on June 8th. Do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
All right.
Second.
Do I have a second? Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those against? Hearing none. Motion carries unanimously. And that brings us to agenda item H, which is 135 Pleasant Street, the elementary school. Site plan special permit continued from our 5-4 meeting. Do we have anyone on the line for 135 Pleasant Street?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
This is the first treatment of its kind that continuously treats moderate to severe eczema.
All right, somebody's got a commercial coming through in the background. So if we could, no free advertising on the Tewksbury Planning Board meetings. All right, so for the petitioners, if you would just state who you guys have on the line for the record, and the floor will be yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, board members. For the record, my name is Peter Collins from CBRE as the owner's project manager on behalf of the applicant, the town of Tewksbury Town Manager, and the Elementary School Building Committee. With me this evening are the design team members, Bill Beatrice from Flansburgh Architects, Aaron Gallagher and Jared Lucci from Niche Engineering, who are civil engineers, and Sam Basta from Crosby, the landscape architects.
All right, gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, board members, since our last meeting last week, the design team has provided copies of a complete set of permitting documents, which include all the revisions and the comments and the discussions that were held that encompassed during the review period with the town engineer and the peer review consultant. I'm sure you have a list of those documents in front of you. I can list them off if you'd like. Since then, we have also worked with the town planner's office, and we have reviewed the draft conditions, and we take no exception. We are prepared to answer any questions and discuss the process of closing the hearing. That's where we are at this point.
All right. So if there's nothing new to add, then we'll open it up. We'll start with Mr. Ryder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think as after last week, the only thing we were waiting for were the draft conditions that Ms. McGinty provided. Is that something that you will read out, Mr. Chairman, out loud? The draft? What's the process?
These are short enough that I could, but what I want to be in the practice of is I'd like to have them up on the screen. I spoke to Anna about this before, because while there's, not too many here, I don't think it's productive, because when we get to Woobin Street, if I have to read all those conditions individually, I think that would be a bad practice to be in and a poor use of all of our time.
No, understand.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
when you're ready, I can share my screen, so.
All right, so why don't we do this, just to make it best for everyone, because we don't have anything else that needs to be up on the screen at this time. Why don't we put the draft conditions that we have up on the screen now while I run through the comments with the members? That way people have an opportunity to sort of digest them while we're going along. Obviously, they're not final until we do them, but at least that way people have that extra little bit of time to think about what they're seeing before we go through them. All right? Thank you very much. All right, so Mr. Ryder.
All right, well, thank you once again. Peter and you and your staff, as I said last week, you guys have been diligent on this, working with the town as well as the town's consultants to resolve any drainage issues. You've also listened to the board and the residents on traffic concerns and I think that all has been addressed in these draft conditions. There is a couple that I do not see here. I know we discussed them early on in the discussions, was about putting the do not enter on those side streets, Summer and Dewey Street, between the hours for school, so we don't have people cutting in and out of that. I know we discussed that a while back, and I know that was a thought from the police department as well. If we can put that in there as under the draft conditions.
Okay, when we get there, that'll be number 9. That if we have.
Okay, I appreciate that. And other than that, great job. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ryder. Mr. Chairman, board members? If I may,
yes.
If I may offer a comment, I guess we have no concern about adding signs. I just think there's a protocol with the town engineer that there's certain rules that I don't think we are allowed to put signs on streets outside of the property limits. I just want to clarify that for an understanding. I'm not saying no, I'm just looking for some clarification. If anybody knows of anything we need to be aware of.
All right, so then what I would suggest, though, is that if we're probably not going to get an answer to that one, but what I would say then is that you'll install any signs in those areas controlled by the site, and if any signage needs to be put outside that, that'll be coordinated between the school and the town. How's that?
Yeah,
that's correct.
No, that's perfect. Mr. Hardiman and I did have a discussion on that. I know this is way back in the early meetings. So I think Mr. Montori was in that as well. So I think this was discussed in the building committee meeting minutes, Mr. Chairman, but okay. They asked if I bring it up as part of the conditions when the full process came in front of the board.
All right, so I think those two, that'll be a catch-all. So those that they can install on site, and any of those that would be considered off-site but are necessary, they can coordinate with the appropriate town departments. I think that'll cover it.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Ryder. All right, Mr. Delaney.
Yeah, I'm all set with this. I was all set with this last week. So we'll just go from there, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
I apologize, Mr. Delaney, but I think we may have missed your initial comment. I think you weren't quite on yet when you said whatever it was. So could you repeat yourself, if you don't mind?
Okay. I was ready to go with this thing last week.
Okay.
I think we've kind of beaten this thing to death. And I think it's about time that we just approve this. All the conditions, they've met all the conditions that we've asked for. And of course, the biggest thing of all was the traffic issue, the parking out on Pleasant Street and so forth. Well, they've addressed all that and taken care of it. So I'm satisfied with what's here. So I'm all set at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Delaney. Mr. Fowler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Peter, you and your group have been fantastic. I knew you were going to be from our conversations and working together over the past few buildings. I have one thought. Nowhere in this plan is there something that coordinates the traffic flow. There are only 2 pages. It's E0.00, which is not as defined as C310. That shows the entire property, both schools. It shows Pleasant Street, Monroe Circle. It's a perfect plan to do what I would hope you could do. On the plan, you don't have to do it on the ground, but on the plan, so anybody that looks at this plan in the future, be it a week from now or 10 years from now, will understand the traffic flow. If you would just put arrows on the plan directing the traffic around the loop, where it comes out of the different driveways, and especially in front of the Ryan School, how it goes in, around, and out, back out to the driveway on the north side and the driveway on the south side. That's where you go in. But if that could be done on the plan, I think it would end a lot of questions for someone that picks the plan up. What's your thought on that, Peter?
Okay, yes, Mr. Fowler, thank you for that comment. I'm trying to open up that drawing now. If one of the design team members from Niche Engineering would like to have a comment, please jump in, either Aaron or Jared, if you'd like, while I'm opening the drawing.
Hi, this is Jared Gentilucci with Niche Engineering. Just stating for the record, just looking through our plan set. So our C3 series drawings, we do have a number of pavement markings and signage throughout the site. Some of those including some arrow markings on the pavement, in particular directing where the one-way traffic is, and we do have some additional signage indicating the one-way traffic flow. But we certainly could add additional signage and pavement markings where required. I didn't quite catch the area that you were looking for, the additional circulation direction, so I'm trying to find that on the plan now.
Yeah, I'm not really looking for you to put more pavement markings or pavement flow signs, but I thought this one sheet of paper, if someone picked up this set of plans, I don't know how many pages there are, but if they picked up this set of plans and wondered how this traffic flow worked, that sheet would direct it without a problem, as long as the pavement arrows were on the plan, not on the ground, but on the plan.
Oh, I see your question. So looking for one sheet showing the entire site.
Yeah, C310.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
gotcha.
C310.
Mr. Fowler, if I may, for just a moment.
Yes, sure.
I believe when we had, as Mr. Laney pointed out, those rather long discussions about traffic, I believe the petitioner submitted just what you're asking. I think they should still have it, and then they can add it to this plan set, and it would get it. I mean, I don't think I'm misremembering, but I believe that they did provide us with that. So I think adding that to this set would be ideal because, to your point, it's the whole site.
Yeah, I mean, the way they wouldn't have to add a sheet if they use this sheet, but whatever they do it. So they can pick up one piece of paper and know how the traffic is going to flow.
If I could just jump in, this is Bill Beatrice from Flansburgh. Yeah, I don't think it's not a problem at all for us to provide a one sheet that has the complete site that just shows the overall traffic flow. You know, it can be a simple diagrammatic diagram, you know, because we have the detail sheets
absolutely
broken up. So
that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Hi, yeah, this is Aaron Gallagher from Niche. I think Mr. Fowler's correct, or whoever just said it. I think we actually did have an exhibit at one of the meetings that did show that already. So we can probably just add that to the
Good.
All right.
That's great. If that's all set, I'm all set.
So thank you, Mr. Fowler.
You're welcome.
Mr. Fratalia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will be short and sweet saying thank you.
No.
And Beatrice, Mr. Beatrice, for your comments and all your work on this project. And I am all set with predictions and willing to vote tonight.
All right. Okay, with that, that's to me. Then again, I'm just going to echo Mr. Fowler's request for this reason, because I can envision when this thing gets ready to open up, how helpful it will be to have that design or that page possibly be something that could be published in the newspaper or whatever, just to get everybody an understanding of, from a sky view of how everybody's going to drive through that. I think that'll be very helpful. So And I'll echo everybody else in terms of, you know, what an excellent job has been done to cross all the Ts and dot all the Is. There is one condition that I would look to add. It just occurred to me actually while I was looking at the plan Mr. Fowler was mentioning, which was that C310. During our discussions, we had the abutter who had requested that the guardrail be installed across from the loading dock area, just in case a truck had any issue. It looks like it's on that C310. It looks like it's showing it. I just want to make sure we added in here that that was something that was going to be done.
It is currently in this set of documents.
Okay. All right, so we'll just because it was an extra item, so I'm just going to add it to the conditions then when we go through them. All right, so with that, then, if there aren't any other comments from the board members, I'll open it up to the audience. Do we have anybody on the line for comment?
No callers yet, Mr. Chairman.
All right, so we'll stretch for a little here just to make sure. So while we're waiting for that, so the members, we have the conditions that were presented and Ms. McGinty had put up on the screen. The two additions, I think that when we get there, that will be added will be as Mr. Ryder requested, which was the installation of those do not enter signs that he discussed. And those will be installed on, you know, if they can be installed on site where they're within the site or coordinated with the town to be installed off-site where necessary. And then the other would be the guardrail across from the loading dock area as added protection for any potential issues of a truck on its way out of the site after doing delivery.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
this is Ann McGinty. Would you like me to share my screen again so we can go?
Yes,
through
if you wouldn't mind, because I think we're just about to get there.
Okay.
So I think I've stretched long enough. We don't have anyone on the line for this?
No callers, Mr. Chairman.
All right. So then with that, we'll return to the board. What is the pleasure of the board at this time?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to close the hearing.
All right, I have a motion to close. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, a motion made and seconded. Let's just do this by the book here. So, Mr. Ryder?
Yes.
Mr. Delaney?
Yes.
Mr. Fowler?
Aye.
Mr. Fratalia? Mr. Fratalia?
He's here somewhere.
Yes.
All right, there we go. All right, and the chair votes aye as well. So unanimous vote for closing the public hearing. All right, so with that, we have one waiver request that we need to deal with, so we'll do that one first. That would be to section 19.041 of chapter 19, which is the waiver of the land disturbance permit. Would you have a motion to grant that waiver?
So moved.
All right, I have a motion made. Do I have a
Second.
second? All right, we have a motion made and seconded. We'll go through again. I'm sorry, so just make sure we do everything right. Mr. Ryder,
Aye.
Mr. Delaney,
Aye.
Mr. Fowler,
Aye.
Mr. Fratalia,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye as well, so unanimous on the waiver request. With that, then to the site plan special permit. We have a motion by the board.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, make a motion to approve with the draft conditions as listed, as
motion?
Ms. McGinty has posted.
And verbal condition?
And the condition, as Mr. Fowler requested, that we have that one sheet that has an entire road directional layout on it as well.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Weren't there a couple of other conditions that weren't written yet but verbalized tonight?
Yes, so we have the installation of the do not enter signs that Mr. Ryder requested, that will either be installed on site or if they need to be installed off site. that the petitioner will coordinate with the appropriate town department to have those signs installed. Because we're going to add the one for the extra sheet. So the extra sheet would be 9. The one I just said would be 10. And then condition 11 would be the installation of the guardrail across from the loading the vehicles exiting the site after doing deliveries. And I think that's it, unless anybody can think of any others.
All set.
I think you got them all.
All right, that sounds right. So, all right, so we have a motion made. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, motion made and seconded. We'll go through the list. Mr. Ryder.
Aye.
Mr. Delaney.
Aye.
Mr. Fowler.
Aye.
Mr. Fratalia.
Aye.
The chair votes aye as well. The vote is unanimous. Thank you, gentlemen. We look forward to this project getting started and for having a new beautiful elementary school. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
See
and
you
board
on the
members.
ground.
All right.
Right. We appreciate your input and patience throughout the site plan special permit process. Thank you again.
Bill, now you got your shovel? Bill, do you have your shovel?
Yep.
Yep.
Thank you, guys.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us
Good job,
to,
Anna.
Thank you.
all right, that brings us to agenda item I, which is 495 Woobin Street, a site plan special permit, use special permit, sign special permit, continued from our May 4th meeting. Do we have anyone on the line for 495 Woobin Street?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, for the record, Robert Buckley, Riemann Bronstein. I just would ask one indulgence. I'm in the city and my internet has failed a couple times. It only takes a few seconds. I may have to sign in if I get dropped. So if you would bear with me if that happens.
We've all had the problem, so we will be more than happy to accommodate.
Thank you. As you know, the last hearing we attended or virtually attended, we went through various items, including comments from the peer review consultant. There was one remaining issue, and that dealt with addressing improvements at the 495 Woobin Street intersection. As I indicated at that meeting, we would have the consultants meet and discuss potential resolution of that, and they did the next day start discussions, and I believe came up with a condition that would commit the applicant to advance the plans to a state where the regional planning would go forward with those improvements, they would have the conceptual plans and survey necessary to submit the necessary applications for funding. That commitment is in the conditions, and we've committed $100,000 towards that effort. The other issue was to update the plans to address comments from the town engineer. Those were delivered Wednesday of last week, updating the plans on the technical issues. So I believe that was addressed. We also provided a draft permit conditions and outline for consideration by the board and staff. We received some comments on Friday from staff. And I believe those have been incorporated into that draft. And I believe we're satisfied with those. The final issue came up this afternoon where there was a request made whether the applicant would improve the sidewalk or continue the sidewalk from the site drive Discovery Way to the adjacent property, which I believe is the self-storage facility. So at that point, you would have a continuous connection of sidewalk from our site drive to the city of Lowell limits. That would, of course, be subject to the municipality, Tewksbury, granting the necessary permits and approvals to do the work in the public way, but the applicant is agreeable to that condition. So I believe as a result of those traffic issues, your peer review consultant, Vanas and Associates, issued on May 7th a letter indicating that all of their concerns had been addressed and no further response was necessary. So we'll would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right. All right, we'll start with Mr. Fowler.
Well, thank you very much. But you know what? I want to say this has been a very easy project to work with. Obviously, you know, the old building was here, the area was used for years in a manner that mirrors what you're putting on the ground today. But the big thing is you have a team that has worked together to make this work fine. And with the aspect of something coming to fruition on 495 and Woobin Street, hopefully that will come, as I say, to fruition. And in my eyes, the whole plan will be a go. But right now, you have my go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fowler. Mr. Fratalia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, a great project, the proposal that came in front of us. Thank you for all the time and effort. I have received a number of phone calls and so forth about the traffic that's going to be generated on Woburn Street. So with that, I don't know if Mr. Dirk is with us or not, but I just wanted to get it out in the public how many vehicles we can expect in and out on a daily basis, seeing that it's a 24/7 operation. Is he with us tonight?
Mr. Chairman, our traffic consultant, I believe, is online. If they may be able to respond to that.
All right, why don't we have that? Why don't we have them do that?
Okay, for the record, my name is Robert Michaud of MDM Transportation Consultants. In prior presentations to the board, we've kind of outlined how we've approached the traffic report for this project. We have the benefit of knowing who the tenant is and the characteristics, the traffic generating characteristics of that tenant based on its vast experience operating sites like this throughout the United States. And in short, what's being proposed is a facility that will have shifts, if you will, work shifts that by and large happen before people are commuting to work and with vehicles that are actually then leaving the site later in the afternoon and that are not coinciding necessarily with the peak hours of traffic on the street, right? So we've got these shift periods where we know most of the traffic is going to occur during a so-called off-peak period. Over the course of an entire day, including all of the employees who work here, the trucks that would be generated, et cetera, throughout the day, we expect that this project in its entirety is going to generate just over 400 total trips per day, about just over 200 entering, 200 exiting. This is not a high-impact traffic project, not through occupancy by the Home Depot. Its total employment levels are likely to be around 200 to 250 among all shifts. And over the course of a typical hour in the morning, we would expect to see under 100 vehicles coming into the property before 7 a.m. And leaving in the afternoon during the so-called commuter peak of less than 50 cars. In fact, actually, it's closer to 30. So this is a tenant that is not going to generate a substantial amount of traffic. It's certainly quantifiable, documented in great detail in the traffic report that we submitted. That said, we've also looked at industry standards, assuming the full use of the site by a generic industrial user. Those numbers are also published in the study and actually serve as the basis for the mitigation that's being drafted as part of the conditioned approval. And those numbers are higher using theoretical, potential tenants. But the actual tenant that will be here, has a shift schedule that will actually create a very, very modest amount of traffic during peak hours and only just over 200 directional trips either entering or exiting over the course of an entire day.
Mr. Chairman, may I make an additional comment on that?
You may.
Just as a fail-safe to your question, One of the conditions that we advocated that be put in the agreement is that 1 year after stabilization or occupancy, that we would do additional traffic monitoring to verify our assumptions. And to the extent that there had to be some so-called tweaking or adjustments, the applicant has committed to that. So not only did we provide the report, the data, and to feel comfortable with it, we're willing a year after stabilization to verify that.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So
Thank you.
let me echo one concern that was brought up to me, and that was the fact that this facility has been vacant for years. So some of the residents that are in the neighborhood there, and my neighborhood is very close proximity to this, are saying that, we haven't seen this much traffic on Woobin Street because the development's been vacant for years. So the concern is, well, what's the safety mechanism for us as residents with all the trucks that are going to be added to this site? I know, and granted, we say, yeah, in the draft conditions, we say that all the trucks are going to be instructed to use 495. And, and we all know that's in theory, and, that's a good theory to have, but some people don't get the memo. So, and they do use the streets. It's happened for years with the Market Basket site, where the contractors that are working for a Market Basket are told not to use the streets of Tewksbury, to use the highways, but they do. So, so that's a factor that the residents have brought to my attention, that's going to happen. So, also given the fact that the construction time frame with the demolition of the building, in and out trucks, demolitions and hauling the equipment out, and then constructing of the building with the time frame of more trucks in and out, never mind the actual occupancy. So there's a safety concern there that they brought to my attention, so I'm bringing it to you. So
okay.
And I don't know if you can understand that, but I mean, the residents of this town are who we represent. So even though I like the project, my concern is for the safety of the residents that live there, because once all is said and done, and you and I both move on to other projects, the residents are going to be the ones that are dealing with the trucks and so forth going forward. So,
yep.
So I mean, have you seen the letters that have come in from some of the residents? And
we saw 2 emails that we delivered to us, I believe, on Friday or today, Mr. Chairman.
But that's part of their concern as well, and I echo their concerns as well to you, and make sure we're on board with that. So,
no, and Mr. Chairman, if I may, that's why we tried to create a feedback loop so that the traffic and the impacts could constantly be discussed and adjusted to. But we feel confident in the analysis, and we feel confident that the communication and resolution of any problems will be forthcoming.
Yeah, and and another issue brought up was residents in the neighborhood use that playground on Woobin Street. So that was a concern of mine, where people that live on Woobin Street getting access to that facility down there to use with all the truck traffic. And if you've walked the process, the sidewalks down there aren't the best. So if you guys could look at any consideration about helping us help the residents in the town by doing some type of mitigation with the sidewalk assistance, I think that would help some way for the residents having access to the playground, so forth and so on. So I know you want to do the other side of the street, and that's great, but the residents are on the other side of the street. So sidewalks would be a plus, and I think that would be something that they would welcome as a welcome addition, in lieu of the traffic and the safety on this project coming into fruition. So I don't know if you can entertain anything like that, Mr. Buckley, but I would put that out tonight.
Well, as I did indicate, we are going to make some sidewalk improvements, and we are committed to doing a roadway safety analysis. That's one of the requirements. And we'll have ongoing discussions with the town.
Okay. With that, I'm all set, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Battaglia. Mr. Delaney.
Yeah, I'm going to echo the words of Mr. Fowler. you can't find a better group of people to work with. They've gone all out to give us the answers to the questions. My biggest concern in the beginning was the trucks using the 495 area, not driving through the neighborhoods. And I would hope that the people running this building would echo that word to the drivers or whatever, or to the companies that deliver. If that gets done, if one sneaks by, that's one thing. But as long as there's not a steady flow, and I am sure that the words of the people that we're dealing with here, this message will be well spent and well sent. And I thank you very much. It's been quite a thing working with you people. I really appreciate your efforts. That's it for me, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Ryder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will echo my colleagues as well. I think you guys have done a tremendous job from start to finish here. I did have one, as we did get one letter in from the city of Lowell, and I'm very familiar with the area, and there is, the concern about the playground, and they did ask if there could be a rapid flash beacon there at that. There is a crosswalk currently that crosses over just over the town line. Mr. Buckley, is that something that has been looked into? I'm not so much concerned in the morning traffic as you stated. I think it's more the afternoon traffic that the residents are concerned with. That I know, the Tewksbury line's right there, and I know Tewksbury residents do use that park, even though it is in Lowell. But that
if I may,
on access.
If I may, once we're in operation, we have that traffic monitoring obligation. Maybe that's something we should look at that time to see if that is warranted, because then we will have the actual traffic counts and a better sense of how traffic is flowing. It's not a big item, but
no, it's not.
But my experience has been, if you put those in, just as many people complain about the rapid flashing lights as they do about the crossing. So why don't we, when we do the scope for the traffic monitoring, consider that as a possible something, an issue to look at.
That would be great. I appreciate that. Understanding that's outside of our purview, but it is connected with the project. And once again, thank you and your staff. I think you've done a great job, and I wish all of them were presented in this way. Great job. Thank you again. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Again, this is sort of an easy one, because I think the other members have already commented that we don't get too many projects where we get more of what we want before we even ask for it, which is often a tooth-pulling exercise for the board that we were able to avoid here. And anyone who thinks, I certainly don't think that this went quickly, but anyone who thinks that this project was, done in anything less than an efficient manner, both from the petitioner or the board's behalf, because it didn't take even longer, I think they just have to look at what was presented and how we were able to avoid having to even ask for these things and have them given to us beforehand. It makes everything a lot smoother. I think it made for an easy process to get to a point where I think most likely we will approve this project this evening after we finish up. I will they were referenced. We did get a couple of comments in. And to boil them down, they're basically traffic comments for the most part. Mr. just brought up, and Mr. Battaglia. But I think, and we'll have we can put up the draft conditions in a moment. But if I'm not mistaken, I think there's 13 conditions listed. I think it's, I'm not sure if I have it right in front of me, but I think it's 13 conditions with, I don't even have a count on the number of subsections within each of those conditions. but it's significant, and a good portion of those are directed specifically towards traffic. So I think that we certainly cannot be accused of not taking the traffic concerns seriously. The petitioner certainly can't be accused of not making every effort to address those traffic concerns in most cases before we even brought them up. But even in those ones that we did, as was referenced at the beginning by the petitioner, in I believe it's $100,000, correct, committed for the potential improvements of the 495 interchange there, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And that's to start the process by doing the plans, which is usually the hardest thing to do.
Correct. So I think that those are important. I think those are huge gets for, I mean, we'll say Tewksbury because that's who we're representing, but I think that it's more than that because we're talking about Billerica, Tewksbury, and Lowell. And I think these things are a benefit to all three communities. And I think I've said it a couple of times now during our meeting, how important it was that the communities work together, that the petitioner was able to work with the communities to make sure that everybody's concerns could be melded into one project. And I think that's not, shouldn't go without saying that that's not always the easiest thing, especially with some of our other neighboring, communities that shall not be named because I never name it. So with that, I will open it up. Do we have anyone on the line with any questions, comments, or concerns on this matter?
We do, and we've also gotten a few other people who are going to be calling back because they had to be on hold. So
Okay, that's fine. So what I would do then, while we start taking the public comments, Ms. McGinty, if you would be able to put up those draft conditions, and then maybe we can just sort of let them scroll along a little bit while the public's commenting. That way, people have a chance to take a look at some of what those are. They may answer some of the questions some of the callers may even have. So if you're able to do that, we can start taking the public calls.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to add, I added in 2 conditions at the end, which I'll show right now.
Okay.
They were based off of the town engineer's letter about, I'll show it right now. I spoke with the town engineer on Friday, and he agreed that those might be possible conditions that you may want to add. So I've highlighted in yellow, and then the item that we just talked about, I also added in that different location. And that's highlighted in yellow. So I just wanted to show that to the group first. So number 12 is about the post-occupancy traffic monitoring, and then I added in this yellow sentence here.
All right, so that's regarding the rapid flashing that Mr. Ryder brought up. Okay.
And then I'm going to go to the bottom of the page, the document, and I've added in N and O are new conditions, and that's from the town engineer's letter. So one's regarding test pits, and then one's regarding the pump station.
All right.
All right, so now
Mr. Buckley, any issues with N and O?
No, none whatsoever.
All right, so good. So we'll get that out of the way. All right, so then let's move on to the public comment, and we'll take the first person on the line. We have someone?
Hi, this is Natasha Vance. I'm the transportation engineer for the city of Lowell. Am I on the call now?
You are.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for taking my call. I did, as one of the members mentioned, I wrote a letter on behalf of the city of Lowell and the city manager, Donahue, addressing the project. The city of Lowell, of course, supports and welcomes the development, as it will obviously bring jobs and economic development to our region, which is always good news. We did have a number of residents raised concerns about traffic along Woburn Street from the 495 interchange to the site. And, you know, since it seems like traffic is limited from going on residential streets, the vast majority of the traffic impacts are going to be borne from the city of Lowell down toward 495. All of the conditions that that have been addressed all seem appropriate. I have a great deal of respect for VNAS, and I agree with their peer assessment. I appreciate that you all are adding the consideration for the rectangular rapid flashing beacon for the crosswalk at the playground. I can tell you I've gotten complaints several times over the years about the difficulty crossing there because people simply won't yield. Rectangular rapid flashing beacons don't need a warrant of any kind, and they really improve the number of people who are yielding. And I can tell you that the city would approve the installation of those. So I'm not of the opinion that we need to wait a year to monitor, but if that's what the planning board prefers, that's certainly appreciated by the city of Lowell that you're considering it. The only other thing I wanted to bring up is I know the roadway safety analysis. I'm wondering if the corridor for that could be extended along Woburn Street through the city of Lowell toward the 495 interchange. I think that there's going to be some opportunities for some, low-hanging fruit for traffic calming potentially. And I also wanted to mention, as the one member mentioned, the residents have safety concerns about the volume of traffic, and of course that it'll be a lot of truck traffic. So a lot of times traffic calming can really help, which can be some pretty inexpensive options. So hopefully the conditions could be modified to include the portion of the roadway that's within Lowell. And I did have, where are my notes? I did have one question. I guess the traffic impact analysis that I saw indicated that there was going to be a much higher trip per day than 400 vehicles. It was more like 2,400 vehicles a day with 200 vehicles in the peak hour. So I think maybe I'm confused about that, but do you anticipate a lot of traffic during school pickup and drop off?
I'll ask our traffic engineer, Mr. Chairman, to respond to that.
Yes, please. Through the chair. The vast majority of trips that were generated here will not be trucks. The vast majority will, in fact, be employees who are working on the first day shift who are actually arriving by about 6 in the morning. Many of the employees who are arriving at that time will actually be taking box trucks out for deliveries during the daytime. Those box trucks are the standard single unibody type trucks. They'll be off of the site before 7 in the morning, and they'll be returning principally between the hours of 4 and 6 p.m. at about between 6 and 10 per hour total. So when we look at the actual characteristic of the Home Depot, the known tenant here, we know that the number of trips that are going to be generated are, as I had presented earlier, just over 200 directional inbound versus outbound trips, a little over 400 trips per day. And the other vehicular trips, the employee-related trips, regular passenger vehicles, by and large, will be spread out, in the afternoon from, 2 o'clock, there'll be a departure period, 6 o'clock, another departure period, 8 o'clock, another departure period. So we're not talking about really high traffic volumes. I will point out that the traffic report did look at, as a very worst case scenario, a possibility that without knowing the tenant, without knowing that this was Home Depot, that if you applied industry standards, the trips could be higher, and that's the more than 2,000 trips a day that you're referring to. That was done because we did not have the liberty of knowing or sharing who the tenant was at that time. So we took a very conservative tack. But now that we know who the tenant is, and now that the project's subject to a monitoring program, we're very comfortable saying that the crib generation will be far below what the standard industry rates are that are published in the report.
Mr. Chairman, if I could comment also, the post monitoring obligation and condition, which I believe you really should do that once you're stabilized, fully in full occupancy, so you get a real count of what's happening on the roadway. That's subject to a scope of review to be worked on between the municipalities. So I think that's an appropriate time that if there are issues on the corridor that have been materializing because of the occupation of this building, that's the time to address it, not speculative now going forward. So you do have some protection in there to address that, and then it forces the applicant to work with the municipalities to mitigate and address those issues. So.
Could I just ask, so is Lowell included in that list of municipalities who will be weighing in on the post-monitoring? I agree that post-monitoring is a great idea, and I do think it's appropriate once there's full build-out and it's fully operational, but I guess it wasn't clear to me if Lowell was going to have a part in evaluating that portion.
I think we would take the same approach we did now, which is, we copied the city initially on the traffic report. So if you wanted to have the town of Tewksbury and or Bill Ricker consult with you in connection with the scope, I think that would be an approach.
Yeah, certainly we would. I mean, I did get an opportunity to look at the draft traffic impact analysis in January, but I never saw a final. One of the reasons our comments are so late is I don't think we were even aware that the project had moved forward. And, I definitely agree with the planning board's assessment that it certainly seems like the applicant has done a lot from a traffic mitigation standpoint. But, when I looked at the traffic impact analysis, the tenant was unknown, and it was really hard. And I didn't get any of the attachments, so it was really hard to determine whether or not the conclusions in the report were reasonable and appropriate. It's definitely encouraging to know that it's going to be significantly less traffic than was originally than the report that I saw. But yes, the City of Lowell would love to be included in the scope of the post monitoring, and we certainly appreciate the invitation.
Yeah,
so, Mr. Buckley, just 1 second before you comment. I saw as Anna was making some updates, the only thing I'd say, and unless the other board members have any objection, I saw that you added in, because the way it reads now is reasonable scope to be agreed upon between the towns. I would just assume that remained the Ricker and Tewksbury, and then add after that, and we'll consult with the City of Lowell. Because I don't feel comfortable adding that in as a specific, because the project doesn't exist in Lowell. So I don't want to have it be, you know what I mean? Like just the parts that are absolutes stay the way they were, but adding in, and we'll also consult with the City of Lowell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was going to make that comment also, that the towns consult with Lowell in preparing their scope. But I would like the record to show that from day one, before this project was even kicked off, we did make contact with the city and provide as much information as we could.
Okay, I'm not doing anymore.
That's fine. Ms. Vance, go ahead if you had something else.
Sure. I just want to reiterate that they did make initial contact with us, but we never saw any we didn't get any follow-up information. So that's part of the reason why comments are so late. I guess, obviously if you want to just consult with us, that's reasonable. I would just reiterate that some of the things that I've seen indicate that the traffic is not allowed to use anything other than 495, which means it would have to come through Lowell. And again, I just appreciate the roadway safety analysis. Consider the corridor from 495 all the way to the site.
Very good.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, This is Robert Michaud. Just a comment, and I'll let Mr. Buckley comment on my comment. Under item 12, the applicant shall install a rapid flash crosswalk light on Woburn Street if deemed necessary by the city of Lowell. My only concern in defining a specific traffic control device or measure is that we think it's appropriate to monitor and evaluate the potential range of solutions that might exist to address things like the crosswalk. And I know that while it may sound simple, just put in a flashing crosswalk, there are other considerations that go into defining an appropriate traffic control measure that have to do with ADA compliance and other things that may actually quite a bit expand the scope of what is actually needed at a location like that. So I would only caution that I would suggest more generic language there to not necessarily identify a specific measure, but to evaluate the impact of the project at that location, and through consultation with the city of Lowell, input from the town of Billiken and Tewksbury, to establish an appropriate mitigating contribution based on the project's impacts. I just note that there aren't any sidewalks out there whatsoever, and my concern is that rapid flash beacon, while it sounds good, may not be the right approach. It's something that we need to evaluate further at that time.
I mean, one way of addressing that would be after the word mitigation adjustments, which then I would say, rather than having an affirmative obligation, say which may include the installation, of a rapid flashing crosswalk. Because as Bob just said, it may not be appropriate, but would consider it.
All right. So if the other members are fine with that, then I think, changing that language, but keeping the overall idea for the rapid flashing.
Right.
Okay. So
it's so it may be one of the mitigation efforts that we would consider rather than having it as an affirmative obligation. So, because it may not make sense.
I think it makes sense just to go through these, and Mr. Chairman, and I can complete the editing afterwards.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. No, because otherwise you're going to be
clear about what I'm doing here. So.
You'll be typing backwards and forwards 2 or 3 times. If you just do them at the end. But at least there's a good placeholder there for now, so people have an idea of what we're talking about. All right, so I think we finished with Ms. Vance. Do we have another person on the line?
We do.
All right. So who do we have on the line?
Kim Scott.
I'm sorry, was that Kim Scott?
Kim Scott, yeah.
Okay, and what's your address?
27 Commonwealth Ave, Lowell.
All right. Okay, so the floor is yours.
Thanks. Oh, I'm sorry?
No, go ahead. Can I just make one suggestion? I don't know if you have the TV on or whatever you have on the background, or if you have me on speaker, but it would be better if you didn't, because you're getting background feedback. So it's hard to hear you.
No, I just turned it off. There's actually a lag, so I didn't think I was on right now. So.
There you go. All right, so the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Kim Scott, and I live at 27 Commonwealth Ave in Lowell, a few blocks away from the proposed Home Depot e-commerce project. I'm actually happy to hear right now, though, that the numbers are changing from what the traffic study said to like 2,400 cars and 450 trucks to what you're saying now, which is good news. The concerns that I've had are that the 495 intersection at exit 37 is an absolute nightmare right now. There's been a lot of accidents there. The ramps are really short, and the traffic backs up onto the highway all the time under the current conditions, so I don't know what's going to happen when you add more trucks to that onto the highway. It's dangerous pulling out of the on-ramps right now on Woobin Street, and I can't imagine how it would work for Home Depot either, trying to make daily deliveries in and out on that off-ramp. Time is money. The side streets are near impossible to pull out from right now during the AM and PM commute. I do a little Hail Mary when I pull out during the day. I imagine they're going to face the same thing unless they're putting lights at Greenwood Avenue. And maybe if they did put lights, that would break up the traffic a little and I've seen so many children almost get hit. We complain, the neighbors complain, people complain in the area all the time. Adding more trucks isn't going to help. I am worried with what they just said, that a year from now they'll look and see how the impact is. I'm worried before then someone's going to get hit, or there's going to be an accident down at 495. So I don't know if waiting a year is really going to do it. I know that Tewksbury had committed to a regional process, like when the Amazon was going to go in there to add sidewalks and bike routes and everything else, and I don't know where that went right now. I'm definitely not anti-development. I appreciate that Tewksbury wants to add tax base. This building's been sitting empty forever. I mean, it's great. I have family in Tewksbury. I just think that the current plan doesn't work. That it's not taken into account of the dangerous situation that's going on right now. So I just appreciate it if you would consider that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. I don't know if the applicant has any comments, but if not, we'll move on to the next person. Mr. Buckley, you all set?
I'm set. Thank you.
All right. Do we have somebody else on the line?
No one yet, Mr. Chairman, but we did have some people trying to call in, I think, so.
All right, so why don't we'll give it a minute, or give it a few seconds anyways. What's our delay right now at? Are we back to like the 10, 15 seconds or?
Yeah, it's only about 30 to 40 seconds right now.
Okay, so we'll see if we have anybody else on the line, but otherwise, I think we just have a couple of additions at this point, or modifications on the conditions. I think as we pointed out, that one we'll go back to in a minute, unless anyone has anything else. But I do know we did have some people that tried to call in, so I don't want to prevent them from having the opportunity to call back in. But I don't know how much longer we'll wait for callbacks. Do any of the members have any additional comments right now while we're giving folks a chance to call in? All right, hearing none. All right, have we had anybody else come back on the line?
No callers back on the line, and we have caught up with the stream.
All right. So I'm going to bring it back then for now to the board for us to just hash out those last couple of condition items. Are the members comfortable with? Mr. Ginty, if you could just bring up that one you had highlighted that you just want to look at the language. Number 12, I think.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, I have a question. The transportation engineer from the state of Lowell, she had mentioned adding in the traffic calming, and I wasn't clear about where that would be added, if it was going to go in number 12.
Well, I don't know about the other members, but that feels like it's all sort of in that consultation with Lowell.
Okay.
The language that we added at that point, that would probably be where I think, if that's something that they want to propose or comment on at that point, that we could add that there, or we'd get that information there. If any of the other members feel differently, but I think that's, and I think too, maybe this is where I'll clarify my comment on why I didn't want to include Lowell in the, who will agree on what they're agreeing on. I just wanted to limit it to Bill Ricker and Tewksbury because it's where the project exists. I'm just leery of pulling in another city or town to make decisions when none of the project physically exists in their city or town. I think consulting with them is good, but locking into having them be part of the decision making, I think gets a little iffy. Which is the same reason why on those traffic, the quieting issue, that better to have it as a consultation item than an absolute. So unless another member has a different feeling on that, I just think that it makes more sense to make it, less strict, but yet still consult with them. So then that's
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Fowler.
Yeah, no, I kept going on. I think someone was trying to mute me when I was trying to get off. Anyways, I concur with what you just said. Let's give this a go.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I make one comment on the proposed modification at 12? Well,
Yes.
I think Anna's making the comments now that, to your point, that if the traffic flashing crosswalk light is deemed necessary, rather than by the city of Lowell, by the after consultation with the town of Tewksbury and Billerica, because
Yeah, I think that's the best way to.
That's right. That's right.
All right. So as long as the other members feel comfortable with that language,
Yes.
Mr. Vitale, you're all right with
Yeah,
that?
I'm good with that. That's fine.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Ryder, I think I just heard you.
Yeah.
Mr. Delaney, you're fine as well? You still have Mr. Delaney?
Oh, I'm all set with it.
Okay, very good. All right, just wanted to check. All right, so then, Mr. Buckley, the language you see there on the screen and those additions of what was it, N and O, you were fine with, correct?
I would just say after Woobin Street in the last sentence, instead of said if in consult, I would say after consultations with the city of Lowell and towns of Billerica. After consultation with the city of Lowell.
Thank you, Ms. McGinty. That's very helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Good job. Good job.
I'm glad
nice
it's
to
you
see
and not me.
Nice to see it in real time. Anna, if you wouldn't mind, if you would go back up to the top, and if you could just sort of slow scroll through the list of conditions. That way, anyone at home could always rewind, freeze, pause, whatever they want, and see what's there. I'm sure, everyone at home is definitely recording this because they want to watch it over and over again when it's time to fall asleep at night.
Right.
But just so, it gives everybody an opportunity to just sort of see the full set of conditions that are proposed that we will likely vote on in a minute. And if also, I'm sorry, go ahead, Anna.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to note that item B is actually a list of waivers. So just to make that clear to the public, that's what they're seeing. And I believe that's
So
something
we'll do
that you
those
guys
first.
want to vote on to list them out. So I'll just continue to scroll right now.
Yes, please. Thank you. All right. So I think in those conversations and stretching attempts by me, we've given as much time as I think we can to see if anybody else has called in. So do we have anyone else on the line?
No callers, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Then I feel that we've provided enough time for anyone to call back in that needed to. I will presume that perhaps they didn't call back in because some of their questions were addressed in our conversations and in the conditions that we're discussing. And we'll move on from there. So with that, if there are no other comments from anyone on the board, I'll ask what the pleasure of the board is at this time.
I'll make a motion to close.
I'll second the motion.
All right, so we have a motion to close and we have a second. We'll go through the list. Mr. Fowler. Mr. Fowler?
Yes.
Mr. Fratalia?
Aye.
Mr. Delaney?
Hey.
Mr. Ryder?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well. So unanimous to close the public hearing. All right, so these ones I will read. So we have a list of, well, one second, I apologize. Let me back up. So we have a list of waiver requests. I'll run through those now. Ginty has them up on the screen. So section 5170, parking and loading requirements. Section 5413, interior parking landscape percentage. Section 5421, parking within 10 feet of property line and within 20 feet of property line abutting a street right of way. Section 5434, snow storage. Section 5440, planted area requirements. Appendix C, table of parking requirements. Section 6707, waiver of table B, table of dimensional requirements. and section 19.043 of chapter 19, waiver stormwater management and erosion control. So those are the issues we've discussed previously during our hearings, and those are the waivered sections that the applicant has requested. Do I have a motion on the waivers that were requested?
So moved.
So moved.
All right, so we have a motion to approve the waivers as requested in the process of our hearings and accounting for these sections as listed. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Mr. Fowler?
Aye.
Mr. Fratalia?
Aye.
Mr. Delaney?
Aye.
Mr. Ryder?
Aye.
The chair votes aye as well. So we have unanimous approval of the waivers as requested and depicted. As to the, go back here, special permit, site plan, special permit, use special permit, sign special permit. What is the pleasure of the board?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion to approve those with the conditions as listed and depicted this evening on, has been provided by Ms. McGinty and discussed by the
Yes.
board. They are letters A through O and the subsections that are included therein. So we have that motion made. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. And Mr. Fowler?
Aye.
Mr. Fratalia?
Aye.
Mr. Delaney?
Aye.
Mr. Ryder?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well. So we have unanimous approval of the special permit, site plan special permit, use special permit, and sign special permit. All right, I'd like to thank everybody for their work on this.
Mr. Chairman, Matt, can I address the board for a second?
You may.
On behalf of the applicant, the tenant, I proposed tenant, I would like to thank the staff. I would like to thank the board, and I would like to thank all the other departments in the town for the last 8 or 9 months working very diligently to make this a reality. And for those who have read the permit, you will see that we've been very comprehensive in trying to address all of the issues. I would also say that if you dealt with the development team, particularly the user and the owner of the property, you would see that they are committed to make this a project that you and the town will be very, very proud of. So again, professionally, I want to thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Buckley.
Thank you, Mr. Buckley. And I think I'd speak to the board in saying that if the use of the property and the build out of the property goes anywhere near as smoothly as the petition has gone, then we're all in good shape.
Thank you.
I agree.
All right. All right, so let's move on to old business. Do we have any old business that any of the members wish to discuss? All right, hearing none. Any new business that any of the members wish to discuss?
No.
All right, also hearing none. Correspondence. We didn't have any correspondence other than the ones for the hearings. And town planners report.
So, Mr. Chairman, I don't have anything to add. It just was a update, so.
All right, do you want to just do the 2 updates?
Yep, I can just pull that up. Sorry. So I did receive a comment from a resident for CubeSmart that the side property are dead. So a couple of them, I did do a site visit, and I'm working with the property owner on addressing that. And then so that was for 395 Woobin Street, and then for 935 Main Street, which is the MDM property. I believe it was 2 meetings ago, board member had a question about the status of that site, if it was being developed. And I've been informed that it's still being utilized for the town for during the construction process.
Okay.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you for that.
Yep.
Thank you,
All
Anna.
right, so the only thing I want to add, it doesn't fall in any of these categories, but we've done several hearings over the last few weeks online, and I know we've sort of tried to thank everyone, all the staff and everything in each of those meetings, but now that we're kind of coming to the end of this kind of 3-week push here. We've had 3 straight meetings. I just want to make sure that we really thank everybody for all their efforts on this, because this is hard enough. It would be impossible without, Anna, Alex, Dawn, everybody taking care of like what has to happen back at the office and being in the office to deal with this stuff. We're online, but they're kind of in the line of fire at the office to make sure that this stuff can kind of get done. We'd never be able to do this, and the town and this board would be in a far worse position. Hopefully when we come out of all this, we come back to meeting at town hall, than we would be otherwise without their help and all the board members' efforts to get on these calls or these online meetings. And since we have a little break before our next meeting, I just wanted to make sure I said that. Maybe we'll be back online. Maybe we'll be back in town hall at the next meeting. We shall see. But I don't think we could have done a better job with what we were working with over these last few weeks, month and a half, 2 months, whatever it is. And everybody should sort of pat themselves on the back for what we've been able to accomplish over the last few weeks.
Everybody stepped up to the plate.
Absolutely. All right. With that, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
I have a motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Good evening, and we'll see you guys in June.
All right. Good night.
Be safe. Thank you.
Bye.